Chapter 494. In such a large base, there was naturally more than one area where pandas were active. Under the guidance of the tour guide, Poplar Fruit and the others moved to another bamboo forest. Compared to the previous place, there were fewer layers of protective fences between the pandas and the tourists. According to the tour guide, most of the pandas here were artificially bred and had not yet recovered their wild nature. So when they saw the tourists, they were very affectionate. There were even pandas that stood up like humans and waved at the tourists in a simple and honest manner. Of course, the tourists were prohibited from having intimate contact with the pandas. It was not because they were worried that the gentle pandas would hurt the tourists, but to prevent the tourists from doing anything excessive to the pandas. This was also for safety reasons. The pandas looked chubby and cute, but did not look harmless. In fact, pandas were also carnivores with developed canine and molar teeth and sharp claws, but now they had evolved into omnivores that mainly ate bamboo. Even so, if they were provoked, they would still lose their temper or violently hurt people. No matter how they were called pandas, they were still bears and not felines. Haha. Poplar Fruit and Kiki stood in the crowd, laughing as they looked at the plump pandas. Suddenly, they heard the tourists' suppressed but happy laughter in front of them. Curious, Poplar Fruit squeezed forward with Kiki in his arms. It turned out that a few pandas were climbing a tree, and one of them had already fallen down. Hearing the tourists' laughter, it shyly raised its paws to cover its eyes, even covering the big dark circles under its eyes. Papa, the panda, what is it doing? Kiki pulled Poplar Fruit's collar and asked curiously. It's climbing a tree. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, but it fell down. What's the name of this panda? Poplar Fruit asked the tour guide next to him. The tour guide asked the zookeeper who was standing in front of the tourists to maintain order. The zookeeper smiled and said, it's called Pang Pang. Because it likes to eat too much, it grew very, very fat. Now it can't even climb a tree. Kiki bit her finger and pointed at the panda that was covering its eyes shyly and rolling on the ground. She asked in a childish voice, Papa, why is Pang Pang covering its eyes? Because it fell down and felt embarrassed, so it covered its eyes. Poplar Fruit smiled and said. As soon as he finished speaking, the giant panda named Pang Pang let go of his hands and tried to get up from the ground. However, because he was too fat, he struggled a few times before he could sit up. This caused the tourists to burst into laughter again. Chi-Chi cared for the giant panda with compassion and asked innocently, Papa, Chubby isn't shameful. Look, Pang Pang's eyes are black. Did it fall down? Kiki had fallen down once before, and there was a bruise on her small arm. It hurt when she touched it. Although Poplar Fruit used his internal strength to dissolve the blood stasis at night, the pain during the day still left a deep impression on her. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, no, Pang Pang's eyes have always been black. Look at the panda on the tree, it's also black. Kiki nodded doubtfully. Obviously, Pang would not give up just because of one failure. It stubbornly climbed up the crooked tree, and then slowly climbed up with its claws on the bark. Poplar Fruit held Kiki's small hand and said with a smile, Kiki, look, Pang is climbing the tree again. Do you think Pang can climb up this time? Chi-Chi's eyes were wide open as she stared fixedly at Fatty. After hearing her father's question, she nodded resolutely and said seriously, yes, Pang is very powerful. Pang seemed to be fatter than the other pandas. He didn't know how Kiki could tell that it was very powerful. Poplar Fruit smiled and rubbed his daughter's hair. He didn't refute her. The tourists all stopped and watched with interest as the fat panda climbed the tree for the second time. The people in front of them were crowded. Poplar Fruit was worried that his daughter couldn't see it, so he raised Kiki on top of his head and let her sit down on his neck. Pang Pang's climbing process was not easy. It was quite thrilling, like a suspense movie. In the middle of it, it didn't hold on firmly once. Its body flipped and it almost fell from the tree again. The tourists all exclaimed. Poplar Fruit also clearly felt that Kiki's grip on his hair instantly increased because of worry. However, Pang actually used its fat bear claws to hold on to the trunk. It swung in the air and still didn't fall. After struggling for a while, it finally bent its body and lay back on the trunk again. Pang is very powerful. Poplar Fruit didn't need to look. When he heard Kiki say this, he could picture Kiki's happy face with her little head held high in his mind. This action was definitely learned from Fong Beibei. The two were like twin sisters, and their expressions were becoming more and more similar. However, this chubby and charmingly naive panda was definitely a black-bellied person. Yanghua held back her laughter as she watched it climb up the crooked tree with difficulty. Then, with a slap of its paw, the panda that had occupied the most comfortable position on the tree branch at the beginning was pushed down. Seeing this funny scene, the tourists burst into laughter again. Chi-Chi was also amused and giggled, her eyes revealing the light of joy. However, after a while, the panda that was pushed down climbed up the tree again. It confronted and wrestled with Pang Pang on the trunk. In the end, the two pandas hugged each other and rolled down. This is wrong. Poplar Fruit took the opportunity to educate Kiki. Children should love each other. Kiki can't learn from Pang Pang and fight. Finally, they came to the base's hospital. The various facilities in the hospital were like a human's obstetrics and gynecology building. In fact, this was indeed a breeding base for newborn panda cubs. The breeding of giant pandas was very cruel. In the wild, if a mother panda gave birth to two cubs, one of them would be abandoned to ensure the survival of at least one of them. Therefore, the giant panda base had to take up this responsibility and use artificial breeding methods to raise every single panda cub as much as possible. Through the glass window, Poplar Fruit and the tourists saw that the panda cub lying in the crib was already a few weeks old. Although its black hair was still a little light, it looked much cuter than a naked newborn panda cub. In this place, Chi-Chi was basically in a state where she saw her favorite toy. She clung to the window and refused to leave no matter what. Papa, Papa! Chi-Chi finally grabbed her father's clothes and desperately twisted around Yanggua's body like a spoiled child. She made an incredible request, to bring a panda cub home to raise. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Could a panda be brought home to raise? However, the cute panda cub had completely overflowed Kiki's love, and Poplar Fruit didn't listen to anything. Chapter 495. At first, the tourists who were with them gradually left, leaving only the helpless Poplar Fruit and Kiki in a stalemate. Kiki pouted and stood on the ground with a wronged expression. She turned her head and looked at the ground, unwilling to move. Poplar Fruit was helpless. He pondered for a long time before squatting down again and saying to Kiki, "Kiki, it's not that Daddy doesn't want you to bring the baby panda back, but if we bring it back, we won't be able to raise it. Kiki will share Granny with Chubby Fatty." Kiki twisted her body and looked at her father pitifully. She even gave the baby panda a name. Of course, it wasn't very creative. It was just an extension of the name of the panda that climbed the tree previously. But pandas eat bamboo. We don't have bamboo at home, so we can only drink Granny. The baby panda won't grow up. Poplar Fruit persuaded her emotionally and logically. Kiki, think about it. Pandas like to live in the forest. They climb trees every day and bask in the sun. Will it still be happy to live in our house? Kiki fell silent. She seemed to be gradually losing her previous persistence. Poplar Fruit saw this and struck while the iron was hot. Also, the baby panda's mother is here. If the baby panda goes home with us, it will be sad if it can't see its mother. When he said this, Poplar Fruit immediately saw Kiki's face darken. His heart thumped and he thought to himself, "Oh no, I said the wrong thing." Although Kiki was less than 1.5 years old, she knew everything. Especially when she was exposed to television. She knew early on that she was different from other children. Kiki didn't have a mother. In the beginning, Kiki would naively run over to her father and ask where her mother went. Poplar Fruit always evaded this question, so gradually, Kiki understood it herself. Although Kiki was envious when she saw other children being doted on by their mothers, she did not cause trouble for her father. That was because the love that her father gave her had long surpassed that of most complete families. Kiki pursed her lips and her big eyes became misty, but she didn't cry. She just choked and said, "Kiki can't see Mommy either." She spoke intermittently, but Poplar Fruit understood what his daughter meant. He knelt on one knee and took a step forward, gently hugging Kiki's small body in his arms. He lovingly kissed Kiki's forehead and said, "Daddy has always been by Kiki's side." Suddenly, Poplar Fruit had an idea. He gently stroked Kiki's palm and asked, Kiki, other than Dad, you still have Bebe's sister. Actually, Dad has always wanted Bebe's sister to be Kiki's mother. Do you like Kiki? Kiki nestled in her father's arms and looked at the ground. She pouted and said pitifully, But Bebe's sister hasn't come to see Kiki for a long time. Does she not like Kiki anymore? Bebe's sister has always liked Kiki. But she has been busy preparing for the competition, so she hasn't had time to see Kiki. Poplar Fruit saw that the topic was gradually moving away from Mommy. He finally breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Also, Bebe's sister often misses our Kiki. When she called, she even asked how Kiki was doing. Did she dress up beautifully every day? Kiki's eyes revealed a trace of shyness. She moaned, shyly burrowed her head into her father's arms, and then whispered, Papa, Kiki misses Bebe's sister. Poplar Fruit missed her too. He touched Kiki's little head and said with a smile, Then let's go back tonight and call Bebe's sister. No, video call her, okay? Let Bebe's sister see that Kiki has grown up and become more beautiful recently. Kiki burrowed out of Poplar Fruit's arms, her face full of joy. She nodded and hugged her father's neck and kissed his cheek. She finally recovered from her melancholy mood. The sunny Kiki was still the cutest. Then let's go back. Next time, if there's a chance, Daddy will bring Kiki to see the panda again? Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki and asked tentatively. Kiki turned her head and looked reluctantly at the panda cub, who was still sleeping soundly in the crib, unaware of the outside world. She struggled in her heart for a while, then nodded and whispered, Okay. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki outside. Along the way, he saw Kiki constantly looking back. Poplar Fruit sighed in his heart. To be honest, if it weren't for the national regulations, there was no way to raise a panda cub at home. Poplar Fruit really wanted to bring a panda cub back to Kiki. Kiki had lost her mother when she was just born. Poplar Fruit owed Kiki too much on this point. Just as they were about to walk out of the hospital, Poplar Fruit inadvertently looked at the bulletin boards on both sides. It was already dark by the time they returned. The Land Rover drove steadily on the wide road, and the city lights in front of them came into view. Poplar Fruit raised his head and looked at Kiki, who was sitting in the baby seat in the back seat, smiling foolishly from ear to ear. He smiled silently and shook his head. Poplar Fruit paid a big price for Kiki to be able to smile so happily all the way back. When they left the hospital, Poplar Fruit saw the pictures of celebrities adopting panda cubs on the bulletin boards of the base. In that instant, he changed his mind. He couldn't really raise a panda at home, but he could let Kiki adopt one at the base. Adopting a panda wasn't an easy thing to do. Needless to say, the procedures were complicated. Poplar Fruit worked from noon to night. The most important thing was that the adoption fee was very expensive. Adopting a panda for a year would cost 40 to 50,000 yuan, and Poplar Fruit spent 1 million yuan to adopt the panda cub that Kiki liked for life. This ignorant panda cub was officially named Xiao Pang Pang by Kiki. At that time, it wasn't just Poplar Fruit, but the zookeepers next to them were all speechless. 1 million yuan for such an uninteresting name. Only Poplar Fruit, who loved his daughter, could do something like this. Of course, spending so much money wasn't just for a name. The base promised that Poplar Fruit and Kiki could visit the base as long as Xiao Pang Pang lived. Furthermore, they could see Xiao Pang Pang's photos and updates on his daily life every week on the official website. For Kiki, this was really an unexpected surprise. Although she couldn't bring it home, when she heard her father say that this Xiao Pang Pang would be Kiki's little friend in the future, Kiki hugged her father happily and kissed him hard, her saliva smearing her father's face. Poplar Fruit didn't really care about the 1 million yuan, nor did he want to use money to make up for it because he felt guilty. He just felt that as long as his daughter could maintain a happy smile, nothing else mattered. Chapter 496. The hole that I dug with more than 1 million words is finally starting to be filled. Yanggua's state of mind was very good. It could be said that the 1 million that he had donated didn't make him feel worried. The next day, he took Chi-Chi and Gold to play in the streets of Shudu City as if nothing had happened. Shudu City was the economic and cultural center of the entire Sichuan province. It was like the beginning of a ray of light. With Shudu City as the starting point, One could easily reach every scenic spot in Sichuan province. There was no need to even mention the fun places like Juzhegu and Dujianjian that they had planned beforehand. Now Yanghua excitedly covered all the places she had visited with the map of delicacies she found online. Just like that, a leisurely trip went by for a week. Compared to the hurried trip with Song Jiwen, Poplar Fruit could be said to be very comfortable this week. He did not have to drive overnight, did not have to look around, and could even take a lot of photos to stimulate Song Jiwen, who had already started work again. However, after a week of traveling, Poplar Fruit looked at the time. There were less than 5 days to the Applied Translation Conference. Although Sichuan province was adjacent to Shicheng, Poplar Fruit still decided to leave early and go to the conference to find out more. When leaving Shudu City, Poplar Fruit did not use the GPS for the first time, nor did he walk on the highway. There were many reasons. First, he had walked around Shudu City so many times during this period of time that he was quite familiar with the roads around Shudu City. Poplar Fruit had even been to Meishan City and Leshan City. Even without a map, he knew where to go. Second, he felt that driving on the highway would lose the meaning of traveling. There were only a few lanes on the highway, and both sides were surrounded by green belts and fences. What could he see? He might as well take the highway. He had time anyway. No matter how many reasons there were, in the end he could not blame others if he got lost. Yes, Poplar Fruit was lost. To be exact, he took the wrong road. Originally, after arriving at the inner river, they could have rested for a night and entered the great city the next day. However, Poplar Fruit drove onto another road. The scenery on the highway was beautiful. Outside the car window, the mountains were undulating, and the road was lined with trees. The summer breeze was gentle, and Kiki sang and danced along the way. This caused Poplar Fruit to forget to pay attention to the signs by the roadside. They drove past the border of the city, but he foolishly thought that he was driving slowly and that they had not reached their destination yet. By the time Poplar Fruit came back to his senses, it was almost dusk. He had arrived at Junyi City, the place that Song Jiwen had mentioned earlier. That's right, he had actually returned to the mountainous Guishan province. With no other choice, Poplar Fruit stayed in Junyi for another night. The next day he turned back and drove in a different direction to Chong City. This time, he still didn't follow the GPS. He thought that as long as he knew the direction, he wouldn't go wrong if he kept going north. Indeed, Chong City happened to be in the north of Guishan province. Of course, this was also because Poplar Fruit didn't care much if he took the wrong road. He had plenty of time. If he took the wrong road, he would only have to pay the price of gas. When going out on a road trip, he pursued freedom. If he rigidly followed the planned route, he might as well sign up for a travel agency. However, if he took the wrong road, not only would he see more beautiful scenery, he might also encounter unexpected situations. For example, robbers. Guishan province, with its green mountains and beautiful rivers, was relatively poor. Among the few provinces in the southwest, it was only slightly better than Bianzong province. However, Bianzong province was in a special geographical location and couldn't be compared. Guishan province was different. Its economic situation couldn't even be compared to provinces with worse natural conditions. Green mountains and beautiful rivers became barren hills and unruly rivers. This stimulated some people to take the risk out of desperation. The place Poplar Fruit was passing through was an autonomous county of the Miao people. In Poplar Fruit's opinion, the scenery here was very beautiful. The mountain peaks in the distance were steep, and the ancient trees towered into the sky nearby. It was a good place that hadn't been developed yet. However, he didn't know that it was because the mountain peaks were too steep, the terrain was too rugged, and the forest was lush with wild beasts. Therefore, very few people were willing to invest here. The road that Poplar Fruit was driving now was the only road in the area that wasn't very smooth. It was narrow and difficult to walk on. The cow dung and horse dung on the road had dried up into patches, and the road shoulders were destroyed by the thick roots of the trees. Even so, the construction of this road a few years ago still used up most of the savings and energy of the people in the villages in the mountains. However, after the construction, the joy of success didn't come for a long time, and the situation of no one asking about it didn't improve. When there was no way out, some people would have evil thoughts in their minds. They would block the road and rob passing tourists or merchants. This was news that emerged endlessly in Guishan province, but was suppressed by the government. The Miao people were simple and honest, but there were also times when they were forced to do something. On the road ahead, there was such a case. Xiong Jiwu was very nervous today. He was lying on the dense tree, with one hand gently clasping a rope and the other holding a long solid wooden stick. There was a circle of old hoop marks on the wooden stick, indicating its origin. It was once the handle of a hoe. Xiong Jiwu's palm holding the wooden stick was full of sweat at the moment. He was so nervous that he didn't even think of changing the position of his grip. There was only one thought left in his mind. Coming. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. 2 days ago, he almost broke his teeth when he made the decision to block the road and rob people. However, he waited on this remote mountain road for 2 days, but he didn't see the target of his robbery. There were few people coming and going on this mountain road, so he didn't see anyone for a long time. It was impossible for Xiong Jiwu to rob the poor villagers who drove motorcycles, so he could only wait for the rich to pass by. From afar, Xiong Jiwu heard the roar of Poplar Fruit's Land Rover as it climbed the mountain. And then he saw the big car that looked expensive from the outside. However, Xiong Jiwu only felt perturbed at the moment when he was about to make a move. His nervousness almost suffocated him. And this former Miao farmer even had the thought of running away at the last minute. Poplar Fruit didn't know about all this. Even on such a road, Poplar Fruit could handle it with ease. He could do 2 or even 3 things at once. Poplar Fruit complained in his heart about why this road was so difficult to walk on, and at the same time, he smiled and chatted with Kiki, who was sitting in the passenger seat, and asked her to look at the scenery outside. Chi-Chi felt as if she was on a roller coaster ride. This feeling was extremely fun. She cried out happily nonstop and even chattered to share her joy with her father. However, Poplar Fruit didn't think that he would encounter danger. He was full of leisure and joy until he suddenly found that less than 5 meters in front of the car, a big black shadow suddenly fell down with a plop. Chapter 497. The thing that fell was black, very big and very heavy. It scraped a lot of branches and leaves as it fell. With a bang, it smashed a hole in the ground. It happened so suddenly that Poplar Fruit didn't even have time to see what fell. It was very likely that it was a rock, but it wasn't the time to pay attention to it. Before he could scream, Poplar Fruit turned the steering wheel almost subconsciously. However, the distance was too close. When the big rock fell, it was only about 5 meters away from the front of the car. No matter how slow Poplar Fruit drove, no matter how fast he turned the steering wheel, he couldn't move the Land Rover's huge body away from the big rock. With a loud bang, Poplar Fruit felt the left side of the car hit the big rock. Before Poplar Fruit could figure out what was going on, because he turned the steering wheel and stepped on the brakes too quickly, he accidentally stepped on the gas pedal, causing the car to skid. The car suddenly jumped and crashed into a big tree on the right side of the road. The big trees here were not comparable to the fast-growing trees in the city's green belt. No matter how strong Poplar Fruit's Land Rover was, it was like an egg hitting a rock in front of a big tree that required 5 or 6 people to wrap their arms around. This sudden crash was even more serious than when it was hit by the big rock. The car lights were broken, the front of the car was dented, and the front windshield was broken. Poplar Fruit only felt his body being thrown by inertia, and his whole body fell towards the steering wheel. At that moment, there were only 2 words left in Poplar Fruit's mind: Kiki. After the accident, Poplar Fruit's first concern wasn't himself or the expensive Land Rover, but Kiki, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Although Kiki was protected by the baby safety seat, Poplar Fruit had never been in an accident before, so he didn't have any confidence in the safety of the baby safety seat. In this extremely dangerous situation, the Poplar Fruit showed an astonishing reaction speed. The moment the car hit the tree, it was as if time had been stretched out. Even 0.1 seconds felt as long as 10,000 years. Poplar Fruit quickly reached out his slender right hand. Although his body couldn't resist the inertia, his hand was able to block Kiki's path, preventing Kiki's body from moving forward again. Bang! A white airbag rapidly expanded in front of Poplar Fruit's eyes. The safety of the Land Rover was reflected at this moment. The airbag's response was very fast. Before Poplar Fruit hit the steering wheel, the airbag had expanded so much that it almost filled half of the driver's seat. Poplar Fruit's face was completely sunk in. It stinks. That was his first thought. The second feeling was that he couldn't breathe. The whole space seemed to be blocked by the front airbag and the side airbag. Poplar Fruit's head was so deep that he couldn't lift his head to breathe. In fact, the impact wasn't very serious. Because of the mountain road, Poplar Fruit had been driving at less than 20 kilometers per hour, and the last step on the accelerator didn't cause too much danger. However, the airbag that had just protected Poplar Fruit seemed to have become a hindrance at this moment. Because it had expanded too much, Poplar Fruit's upper body could barely move. Poplar Fruit knew that the one in the most danger now wasn't him. It was Kiki, whose body was the most fragile. He didn't know if Kiki was hurt because of the crash, but the airbag was covering Kiki's little face. If it wasn't released in time, Kiki would be in danger of suffocating. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit still had a right hand in front of Kiki. Poplar Fruit opened and cupped his right hand, creating a small gap for Kiki. Immediately, Poplar Fruit heard Kiki's weak crying. Poplar Fruit became more and more anxious. He twisted his dizzy head and tried to recall the Land Rover's manual that he had read when he bought the car. Airbag, airbag. It took Yang Guo a lot of effort to find the page about the airbag from the memory that she had only briefly scanned through at that time. Poplar Fruit turned his head and found that the airbag had gradually deflated. He also regained his ability to move. That's more like it. Poplar Fruit laughed at himself. How could the manufacturer not consider this problem? He used his left hand to push open the airbag in front of him, and turned to look at Kiki. Kiki was actually very safe. With the safety seat belt and the protection of her father's palm, she was sitting in the same position as Mount Tai. It was just that the scene just now was too sudden, and Kiki was also frightened. Turning her head, Kiki pouted and kept sobbing. She aggrievedly reached out her hands to seek comfort from her most trusted father. Poplar Fruit quickly unbuckled his seat belt, stepped over the middle of the armrest area, and rescued his daughter from the safety seat. Poplar Fruit hugged the somewhat frightened Kiki in front of him, and kept patting her back and comforting her with words. At this time, he took a peek at the situation of the car. Needless to say, the front seat was in a terrible state. The computer in the back seat fell directly from the shelf to the ground. He didn't know if it was smashed or not, and the materials in the car were also squeezed together due to inertia. The gold seemed to be stuck in the suitcase, and other things that fell down. It kept making weak whining sounds, as if it was calling for help, and also seemed to be expressing its inner panic. Knock knock. Knock knock. Suddenly, there were a few knocks on the car window. Poplar Fruit turned his head in surprise and saw a dark and thin man standing outside with a strange expression. The man standing there was Xiong Jiwu. When he pulled the trigger and threw the stone down from the tree, it was already a little late. If he didn't hesitate, Poplar Fruit's car wouldn't have hit the stone and the tree so quickly. This car accident was already out of his script. Xiong Jiwu hid in the tree and was dumbfounded. He even wanted to run away. Someone died. Someone died. Xiong Jiwu climbed down from the tree with a sad face and crept toward the big car in fear. Poplar Fruit's car window was covered with a reflective glass film, so it was impossible to see the situation inside from the outside. Xiong Jiwu saw that there was no movement for a long time, and only felt that his throat was dry. In the end, he couldn't help but knock on the car window. If this action was seen by other road bandits, they would definitely slap him to death. Too amateur. Knocking on the car window like knocking on the door was as stupid as a thief who wanted to sneak into someone's house to steal and knock on the door to see if the owner was awake. Seeing the dark and thin man dressed as a farmer outside, Poplar Fruit was stunned, but he didn't think too much about it. He thought that the farmer nearby heard the sound of the car accident and rushed over. Poplar Fruit still didn't understand what was going on with the main culprit, Big Stone. Until now, he still thought that his car accident was an accident. Chapter 498. A fellow countryman is here? Great! Seeing Xiong Jiwu, Poplar Fruit was very happy. At first, he picked up his mobile phone and saw that there was no signal. Poplar Fruit thought that he had a car accident in the wilderness. Now he was in trouble. Xiongjiwu was still looking into the car window when the door suddenly moved. He was so scared that he limped back, completely forgetting the existence of the big wooden stick in his hand that was as thick as an ordinary person's forearm. After taking a few steps back, he saw a tall man's leg stretching out from the open door. At the moment when Poplar Fruit got out of the car, even if Xiongjiwu was not a woman, he was still dazzled by Poplar Fruit's handsomeness. His first thought was, how could this kid be so tall? His second thought was, how could this kid be so white? Although all kinds of admiring thoughts were surging in Xiongjiwu's mind. In fact, when Poplar Fruit came out, he was very embarrassed. The car door was a bit jammed and could only open a small gap, so he had to squeeze out from the side of the small gap. Originally, because of the car accident, his hair was a bit messy. After squeezing out, his white shirt was caught somewhere and several buttons on the top broke off. Even so, the messy hairstyle and clothes could not hide the charm of Poplar Fruit. He was originally a big boy with sunshine. With just a slight smile, it was as if the whole forest was filled with bright sunshine, warm and warm. After several buttons on the top of the shirt broke off, it highlighted Poplar Fruit's perfect figure even more. In the past, when he wore clothes, he only looked tall and skinny. No one would think that Yongguo was as good as him. His chest and abdominal muscles were as sharp as a knife. Although they were not obvious, their appearance was even more attractive. Poplar Fruit first smiled apologetically to Xiongjiwu, who was still a little confused and stiff. What made him stunned was, apologize? What did this mean? Who was apologizing to whom? Was there a mistake? Poplar Fruit bent down and carried Kiki out of the car. She was still anxious when she couldn't see her father. Seeing our little fairy's pitiful appearance with her hair stuck to her cheeks by her tears, Poplar Fruit lovingly helped her tidy up her messy hair, and then gently patted her little face to comfort her. After finishing his work, Poplar Fruit raised his head and smiled at the silly Xiongjiwu, fellow countryman. As soon as Poplar Fruit called out, Xiongjiwu hurriedly retreated a few steps. He didn't know why, but when he saw Poplar Fruit's smile, he felt flustered. Poplar Fruit was very depressed. Although he was not the most handsome man in the world, his appearance was not bad. How could he scare the people of minority nationality like this? Xiongjiwu swallowed his saliva with great effort, and then slightly opened his mouth as he looked at Poplar Fruit with hesitation. Xiongjiwu was experiencing the biggest struggle in his life. Snatch or not? Xiongjiwu was in a dilemma. Snatch. Seeing that Poplar Fruit was still holding a lovely and beautiful baby in his arms, he felt that his conscience was being condemned. However, if he didn't snatch, Xiongjiwu thought of the two children at home, and his wife who was still lying in the hospital bed, and his heart was filled with bitterness. In Xiongjiwu's view, Poplar Fruit, who looked like a scholar, was the best choice. Poplar Fruit's appearance was once again deceiving others. Besides, in this desolate place, if he missed it, he wouldn't be able to wait for a few more weeks for a rich person to pass by. And he didn't have so much time to wait. Xiongjiwu swallowed his saliva hard. His palms were full of sweat. He pinched the big wooden stick and made up his mind. He waved the big wooden stick, pointed it at Poplar Fruit and shouted, "This? Cough, cough, cough." Xiongjiwu didn't know if he was too nervous or swallowed his saliva too hard, but he was choked by his own saliva as soon as he shouted, causing him to cough violently. Poplar Fruit was also shocked by the stick he waved, but when he saw Xiongjiwu covering his throat and coughing violently, Poplar Fruit couldn't help laughing. Xiongjiwu finally stopped coughing. He endured the pain in his throat and shouted with a trembling voice, "This road is mine. I opened it. This road is mine. If you want to pass through this road, you have to pay for the road." Xiongjiwu's Mandarin accent was very heavy, but this line was so classic that one could guess the meaning without hearing it clearly. He saw that Poplar Fruit just frowned and didn't respond at all, so he shouted again, "Hey, this is robbery." Xiongjiwu shouted very hard. It was unknown if he was cheering himself up with his loud voice. Poplar Fruit's warm eyes gradually turned cold. He was not stupid. When he thought of the big stone that suddenly fell from the tree and Xiongjiwu's appearance, Poplar Fruit had some doubts in his heart. Hearing Xiongjiwu's words, he was more and more certain of the doubts in his heart. Just now was it you who did it? Poplar Fruit turned sideways and protected Kiki with one hand. Although he was not afraid of the weak Meow Man in front of him, after all, Xiongjiwu had a big wooden stick in his hand. Who knew if he would hurt Kiki when he waved it? At this time, Xiongjiwu made up his mind and planned to go all the way. He straightened his neck and said in a rough voice, I did it. But I didn't expect you to hit the tree. A person's momentum was supported by his strength. Take Xiongjiwu as an example. He did not make a living by robbing, so he could not pretend to be a robber. In the beginning he still had the courage to speak, but in the end he was busy explaining himself. The momentum that he had pretended to be good collapsed in an instant. So my daughter and I almost had a car accident, and this was also caused by you? Poplar Fruit's eyes were spurting flames of anger. He stepped forward and asked. He didn't like to lose his temper, but Kiki was his reverse scale. Poplar Fruit knew how dangerous the situation was just now. If it weren't for the excellent protective performance of the Land Rover and his driving speed, he and Kiki would have really had an accident just now. Poplar Fruit might be spared. After all, his physical fitness was there. But what about Kiki? She was still a child. Xiongjiwu was scared by Poplar Fruit and took 2 more steps back. From the beginning, he kept retreating, and he almost retreated from one side of the road to the other side. When Xiongjiwu heard Poplar Fruit's reproach, a trace of regret flashed in his eyes. His conscience was being dissected piece by Xiao Dao. However, he couldn't retreat anymore, and he couldn't be afraid anymore. Holding the big wooden stick in his hand, which seemed to be the source of his strength, Xiongjiwu once again gathered his courage. He took a step forward, keeping a certain distance from Poplar Fruit, and then pointed the wooden stick at Poplar Fruit's nose from a distance. Cut the crap. Xiongjiwu's voice was a little strong. He shouted with difficulty, I am a robber. You give me the money. If there were other road robbers in this world, they would definitely slap this guy to death without hesitation. He was such a disgrace to the road robbers. Chapter 499. Poplar Fruit was so angry that he wanted to laugh. He could see that the Meow Man in front of him, who was dressed like a farmer, was not very agile. His left leg was lame, and he was swaying when he walked. Poplar Fruit really could not figure out where his confidence to rob him came from. In fact, Xiongjiwu did not dare to hit him with the wooden stick. With Kiki there, he was a little afraid of hitting the rat for fear of breaking the vases. Even if Kiki was not there, he would not be able to get over hitting people with a wooden stick. So he was just playing psychological warfare. In Xiongjiwu's impression, the people in the city were very delicate and afraid of pain and death. It was very likely that they would be frightened by his stick, so he could rob the money without having to do anything. However, he met Poplar Fruit. Xiongjiwu probably did not expect that the first time he came out to commit a crime and waited for 2 days before he made up his mind to rob the target was actually a kung fu master. Why did you choose us? Poplar Fruit asked softly. This question made Xiongjiwu stunned for a moment, and his attention, which had been tightly guarded, became a little absent-minded. Poplar Fruit had been waiting for this moment. Although he disdained to care about Xiongjiwu, Kiki was in his arms, so Poplar Fruit could not be careless. Seeing Xiongjiwu's eyes drifting, Poplar Fruit suddenly jumped, and his left hand stretched out like a snake coming out of a hole. Before Xiongjiwu could react, Poplar Fruit's wrist turned in the air, and the other end of the big wooden stick was tightly clasped between his thumb and forefinger. Xiongjiwu was shocked. He wanted to pull back and grab the big wooden stick back. However, at this time, a huge force came from the wooden stick, which he could not resist at all. Instead, Xiongjiwu's body was pulled by the wooden stick, and he staggered a few steps forward. He did not know if it was because of his inconvenient left leg, but Xiongjiwu groaned and fell in the middle of the road. At this moment, it was obvious who had the upper hand. The wooden stick had also changed hands. Poplar Fruit's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He turned his left wrist forcefully, and the thick and long wooden stick turned into a beautiful stick flower in his hand. It could be said that Poplar Fruit hated Xiongjiwu to the core for causing him and his daughter to encounter such a great danger. Without the slightest hesitation, he waved the wooden stick and swung it in a big circle in the air, about to hit Xiongjiwu. Wah! Kiki's sudden sobbing in her father's ear made his left hand move sluggishly. The wooden stick that was ready to be used was stopped by him. Poplar Fruit hurriedly turned to look at his daughter and asked anxiously, "Kiki, what's wrong?" Kiki stretched out her two small arms and hugged her father's neck with all her strength. She was scared and said with a sobbing tone, "Papa, don't fight, okay? Kiki is so scared." In fact, it was the first time that Kiki had seen Poplar Fruit's ferocious expression because of anger. She was a little scared. However, no matter what Poplar Fruit had become, in Kiki's heart, her father would always be her closest and most beloved patron saint. That was why Kiki had the courage to hug her father and not let him do anything wrong again. Poplar Fruit looked at the pitiful Kiki with tears on her face. Her two big eyes were filled with uneasiness and worry at this moment, which made the angry Poplar Fruit's heart suddenly soften. He not only stopped the movement of his hand, but also threw the big wooden stick in his hand far away. "Don't be afraid. Papa doesn't fight." Poplar Fruit gently combed Kiki's hair on the tips of her ears and said with a smile, "If Kiki doesn't like it, Papa won't do it." Her father's intimate and warm tone was like a spring breeze that dissolved the iciness and unfamiliarity brought about by his previous expression. Chi-Chi became happy again, and her cloudy mood turned sunny all of a sudden. She even left a wet and loving kiss mark on her father's handsome face. After Xiongjiwu's stick was snatched away by Poplar Fruit, he fell to the ground, and there was only one thought left in his mind. He was dead. If it were him, he would not show mercy to a road bandit who wanted to rob him a few seconds ago. Hearing the sound of the wooden stick breaking through the air, Xiongjiwu closed his eyes in despair, waiting for the sharp pain of the wooden stick falling down. However, the wooden stick did not fall as expected. In a trance, Xiongjiwu heard the voices of Poplar Fruit and Kiki, and then heard the sound of Poplar Fruit throwing the wooden stick far away. He breathed a sigh of relief and fell to the ground powerlessly. Poplar Fruit had just given him too much pressure. Even if he fell to the ground, his back was wet with sweat, and his navy blue jacket was stuck to his body. After a long time, Xiongjiwu lowered his head and got up from the ground. Today's robbery was a failure. Although he had not been caught by Poplar Fruit yet, did he still need to be caught? Xiongjiwu's left leg was congenitally deformed. It was not obvious from the outside, but he could not walk with strength. He could only limp as a crutch. Without his biggest reliance, the wooden stick, Xiongjiwu could not even beat a rural woman, let alone the young man Poplar Fruit, who could dodge his wooden stick empty-handed. He couldn't beat him and he couldn't run away. Now, Xiongjiwu was in the state of being a fish on a chopping board. Poplar Fruit promised Kiki not to fight again, but it did not mean that Poplar Fruit would let Xiongjiwu go. He was still angry. On the one hand, he and Kiki were in danger. In any case, he could not let Xiongjiwu go easily. On the other hand, his beloved car was damaged. The front of the car was in a mess. He did not know whether the engine was damaged or not, but the headlights and windshield were smashed. Then there was also a problem with the door. Poplar Fruit knew that it was impossible for his Land Rover to go on the road again without a major repair. At this time, Poplar Fruit remembered that Goldie was stuck in the rear compartment. He carried Kiki to the rear compartment and opened the back door. After opening the door, Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled. Goldie was really lucky. It was coincidentally stuck in a small space. Although it could not move because several suitcases and supply bags were just right around each other, the small space was still solid and did not collapse. Seeing its master appear, Goldie whimpered twice. It could not even wag its tail. The whole dog was clamped into a ball with its hands and feet tied. Poplar Fruit quickly pulled the luggage bag above, then pulled open a suitcase. Goldie shook a little and got out. It quickly jumped out of the rear compartment and whimpered with lingering fear. It desperately rubbed against Poplar Fruit's shoes. Just when Poplar Fruit rescued Goldie, Xiongjiwu's eyes moved. He wanted to take the opportunity to escape. But after looking at the surrounding terrain, Xiongjiwu lowered his head in disappointment. On this section of the road, there were bushes that could not be climbed over. And on the other side was the forest where Poplar Fruit had crashed. It was impossible to escape. Then there were only two directions left on the road to escape. However, with his crippled left leg, how could he possibly escape? At first, Xiong chose this area because he thought that he could use the terrain to prevent the other party from escaping. He did not expect that he would end up digging such a big hole for himself. Hey, don't play dead there. Poplar Fruit came over and pointed at his car impolitely. Look at what you have done. Chapter 500. If it were any other time, Poplar Fruit wouldn't have said such harsh words, but today was different. Xiong had caused Poplar Fruit and Kiki to be so miserable. Poplar Fruit was so angry that he didn't beat him with a stick. Did he want Poplar Fruit to be kind to him? Xiong was surprisingly calm at this time. He didn't panic like he did at the beginning of the robbery. He lowered his head and asked in a low voice, "What do you want?" Poplar Fruit was a little angry and amused. He pointed to the Land Rover behind him, which could no longer be driven, and said, "What do you want? You've ruined my car. What do you think?" Xiong didn't answer. Poplar Fruit paused for a while, then took out his mobile phone and said angrily, "You don't want to talk, right? Then call the police. The police will deal with it as they will. You have to pay as much as you need to." "I don't have any money." Xiong raised his head and said with a frustrated look. Poplar Fruit saw that there was still no signal on his mobile phone. He put down his hand again and sneered. "No money? Tell your family to bring money in exchange for you." Xiong raised his head and looked at Poplar Fruit. He took a deep breath, but he also knew in his heart that it was impossible to resist Poplar Fruit. Xiong struggled for a while before he finally smiled sadly and said, "Don't harass my family. I'll take responsibility for what I did." "What responsibility? What responsibility do you have?" Speaking of this, Poplar Fruit was so angry that he kicked a small stone on the ground and said angrily, "As long as you don't harass my family, I'll do whatever you want." Xiong staggered to his feet. His legs were weak, but he still straightened his back. His eyes were full of reluctance and worry, but he resolutely said, "If my death can be exchanged for your forgiveness, I can jump off the mountain now." Xiong expression showed that he was not joking. He actually struggled and limped up the mountain, dragging one of his legs. It seemed that he wanted to climb over the bushes and jump to end everything. Poplar Fruit was really shocked by Xiong desperate action. He frowned and shouted, "Hey, what are you doing? I didn't say I wanted you dead." Xiong crime was very serious, but it did not warrant death. Poplar Fruit also did not have the right to decide a person's life and death, nor did he have the cruel thought. Xiong looked back at Poplar Fruit and said desolately, "I don't have any money to compensate you. I really don't. If you force me, I can only apologize with my death." "Aya. I say, you're really something." Yang Guo was flustered and exasperated as she scolded. "Why do you always think about death? Do you have a family? Have you ever considered them? If you die, what will happen to them?" No matter how he looked at it, Xiong was at the age of being a father. The age of being a father here was not a strange existence like Poplar Fruit. Xiong looked nearly 40 years old. If he were to get married and have children at the age of 20 to 30, his children would be about 10 years old. Poplar Fruit was a father himself. He had also experienced life and death, so he knew the importance of a complete family. Whether it was a father or a mother, if one of them was missing, the sky in which the child grew up would be less colorful. Therefore, Poplar Fruit wanted to make Xiong give up the idea of killing himself by reprimanding him. However, he did not expect that his words would completely hit Xiong disheartened heart. Wah! Under Poplar Fruit's stunned gaze, Xiong fell to the ground like a child and cried bitterly. "Hey, no, I didn't mean that." Poplar Fruit was at a loss for what to do with a crying girl, let alone a man in front of him. However, Xiong did not care about his identity as a man who did not cry easily. He cried louder and louder, as if the grievances and helplessness that he had suppressed for a long time had completely broken out at this moment. His voice was so miserable that it made people feel sad. Kiki, who was squatting beside Goldie, heard the cry resounding through the valley. The kind little girl's eyes also turned red. She trotted to her father. After Poplar Fruit picked her up, Kiki asked with tears of compassion, "Papa, why is Uncle crying?" Poplar Fruit could not answer this question. He hesitated for a moment and said, Maybe this uncle is sad about something. As the saying went, a man does not cry easily, only because he has not been sad. Hearing Xiongjiwu cry so sadly, Poplar Fruit also felt sad and felt bad. He always felt as if he had done something bad. Okay. Poplar Fruit finally could not help saying loudly, "You don't have to pay for it, okay? Don't cry. Really, are you still a man?" To be honest, Poplar Fruit did not care much about the money for repairing the car. When he bought the car, in order to leave a good impression on Hiwunjua, Bosqua also gave him the highest car insurance. In such an accident, if Poplar Fruit insisted that it was an accident, the insurance company could pay for it in full. The reason why Poplar Fruit insisted on making Xiongjiwu pay before was just to teach him a lesson. After all, he caused the father and daughter to be in a car accident. Although he was not injured, he was very angry in his heart. Now Poplar Fruit's anger was washed away by Xiongjiwu's tears. He was very annoyed by the crying, so he simply did not ask him to pay for it. Of course, this also had something to do with the fact that Xiongjiwu did not look like a bad person. If Xiongjiwu was a vicious person who often did this kind of thing, Poplar Fruit would not only ask him to pay, but also call the police and put him in jail. Yonggua's words didn't make Xiongjiwu feel happy. His mood was still heavy. Although his crying gradually stopped, his expression was still depressed, and his depressed appearance didn't reduce at all. "I don't think you often do this kind of thing, do you?" Poplar Fruit frowned and asked as he remembered Xiongjiwu's timid look when he waved the wooden stick before. "First time." Xiongjiwu lowered his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Hey, I bumped into him the first time." Poplar Fruit shook his head and smiled helplessly. "I really don't know if I should say that it's my misfortune or your fortune. It's because you met me." Yonggua pointed at her own nose and said, "If it were another driver, with your 3 axes, they would have already been beaten to death." Xiongjiwu lowered his head and said nothing. He knew what Poplar Fruit meant. His left leg was not flexible, and his body was not strong enough due to the lack of nutrition since he was a child. In the past, anyone in the village could bully him, let alone the drivers outside. "You used to be a farmer, right?" Poplar Fruit asked. "Yes," Xiongjiwu replied in a low voice. "I say, you were doing well as a farmer. Why did you become a road bandit?" Poplar Fruit patted the ground on the road and said angrily, "If you could have lived a dutiful life, why did you have to take risks? Aren't you afraid of being caught?" Chapter 501. Do you think I want to do that? After being scolded by Poplar Fruit, Xiongjiwu, who had been acting very cowardly, suddenly burst out and roared in a hoarse voice. Poplar Fruit and Kiki were shocked by his hysteria all of a sudden. Before Xiongjiwu finished speaking, he tore off the headscarf on his head and hammered the ground with red eyes, as if the earth and the mountain had bullied him. "Do you think I want to rob? Do you think I don't want to live a good life with my wife and children?" In the end, Xiongjiwu knelt on the ground, buried his head between his arms that had just hammered the ground, and said in a choked voice, "If I wasn't forced into a dead end, how could I? How could I think of doing such an illegal thing?" Poplar Fruit gradually understood the grievances and unwillingness behind his intermittent narration. Xiongjiwu came from a remote Hmong village in this mountain range. There were many mountains and rivers in Guishan province. Many places were like here, with steep mountains and impassable roads. Even like Xiongjiwu's hometown, some Hmong villages did not see many outsiders all year round. Not to mention the problem of economic development. Sometimes, they would be thankful if the county magistrate could give them enough money to save the poor. Although there were many rivers in Guishan province, it could not stop the continuous drought in recent years. The young and strong people in the Hmong village found that the several acres of terrace fields at home could not get enough food and clothing, so they went out to work. They could only come back once or twice a year, but they were very satisfied if they could earn enough money for their whole family. Xiongjiwu was physically disabled, so he could not compare with others in farming. After the climate became dry, his income plummeted. In order to make a living, Xiongjiwu once followed the young men in the village to work in Guangdong province. However, the biggest problem he faced was his disabled left leg. No one was willing to hire a migrant worker with physical disability. Even the cheapest restaurant dishwasher was a nimble auntie. After spending all his money, Xiongjiwu slept on the bridge and picked up garbage. In the end, he was caught by the urban management and locked up for a few days. Xiongjiwu went out full of hope, but came back dejectedly. In such a big city, there was no place for him to stay. After he came back, the situation did not improve much. His wife, who had always been tolerant of him, had recently fallen seriously ill. Although it was not a terminal illness, this kind of gynecological disease would really become a terminal illness if it dragged on. His wife was sick in bed. Xiongjiwu emptied all the savings at home, but it was not even half of the medical expenses. Moreover, there was another problem in front of Xiongjiwu. His eldest daughter, Xiong Xiaolin, had scored an unexpectedly high score in the junior high exam this year. In other words, she could enter the best junior high school in the county after a month. After Xiongjiwu received the news, he was both happy and worried, and even more worried. He was happy that his daughter was successful. For so many years, there were so many children in the village, but only a few could be admitted into the junior high school in the county. If they couldn't get into the junior high school in the county, it meant that they couldn't study. Xiong Xiaolin was the first child in the village to get into the best junior high school in the county. After bumping into a wall in a big city for a year, Xiongjiwu's horizons had been broadened a lot. Moreover, he deeply understood a truth. For farmers in remote areas like them who had no foundation, studying was the only way out. It was because he had no skills, no body, and even his cultural level had only reached the point where he could recognize words clearly. Therefore, it was difficult for him to move around in a big city. Xiong Xiaolin's future would definitely be bright if she could enter the best junior high school in the county. Xiongjiwu was very clear about this, so he was very happy. However, studying also costs money. According to the current situation of the Xiong family, the family's money was just enough for Xiong Xiaolin's tuition and miscellaneous expenses, compulsory education, for a year. Apart from this, Xiongjiwu could no longer squeeze out a little living expenses. Xiong Xiaolin could only scrimp and save, waiting for her father to send new money every month. If it weren't for his wife, even if Xiongjiwu gritted his teeth and ran back to the big city to clean the shoes of the big men in the nightclub, he would definitely do his best to cultivate his daughter. However, who knew that less than 2 days after Xiong Xiaolin received the notice, his wife suddenly fell ill. After the results of the examination, Xiongjiwu's hair turned white almost overnight. His black and white hair looked as if he had aged 20 years. Xiongjiwu felt so worried that his head hurt. That night, the sensible Xiong Xiaolin suddenly ran to her father and tore up the acceptance letter that she had worked so hard to get right in front of him. Although tearing up a middle school acceptance letter wasn't a big deal, Xiong Xiaolin had already told her father clearly that she didn't have to go to school, but she had to save her mother. The other people in the village also heard the news about Xiongjiwu. Most of the Miao family were kind-hearted people. They took out a few hundred yuan from their originally small savings and secretly gave it to Xiongjiwu. Xiongjiwu was so grateful that he cried. However, after all, everyone in the Miao village was poor. After all, it was far from enough to cover his wife's medical expenses. Xiongjiwu saw that the deadline for the operation was approaching. His wife had often fainted from the pain, but he still couldn't raise enough money. His wife had asked Xiongjiwu to give up many times. Although they had been together for more than 10 years, Xiongjiwu and his wife lived a tight life. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were poor. However, the relationship between Xiongjiwu and his wife was very good. They had helped each other in times of need for more than 10 years. How could Xiongjiwu bear to see his wife suffer and leave him? In the end, Xiongjiwu had no choice but to use the method of robbery. However, the first and last time he made a move, he encountered Poplar Fruit. When Poplar Fruit asked him to pay the compensation, Xiongjiwu was already disheartened. His heart was crying. When he finally decided to walk up the cliff, he murmured to his wife in his heart, "By Niu, brother Xiong is incompetent. I can't save you. I'll go down and wait for you." His idea was to use his death in exchange for Poplar Fruit's forgiveness, so that he could keep the last tuition fee that his family left for Xiaolin. He couldn't cure his wife's illness. Then he would go down and accompany his wife to cross this bridge. Perhaps the regret in this life could only be repaid in the next life. For so many years, Xiongjiwu had suffered a lot of grievances, but he had never told anyone. Today, in front of Poplar Fruit, he completely exploded. His tears flowed, he danced, and he seemed to be crazy. However, every word and sentence came from the bottom of his heart. In the end, he was so hoarse that he couldn't make a sound. Unknowingly, Poplar Fruit held his daughter and listened to him for half an hour. Unknowingly, his eyes were filled with tears. Even Kiki, who didn't fully understand, sobbed softly. She couldn't control her emotions. Chapter 502. After Xiongjiwu finished speaking, he fell into silence, and Poplar Fruit did not know how to comfort him. It was terribly quiet all around, and even the sound of Goldie's tail sweeping the leaves could be heard clearly. "Papa!" Kiki pulled the clothes in front of her father and called softly. Poplar Fruit looked down at his daughter and saw the sadness in Kiki's big watery eyes. Poplar Fruit gently touched Kiki's hair and heard her whisper pitifully in his ear, "Papa, Uncle is so pitiful." With a smile, Poplar Fruit immediately understood what Kiki meant. He gently kissed his daughter's tender forehead and comforted her. "Kiki, don't worry. Papa knows what to do. Don't be sad." Poplar Fruit walked over and gently pulled Xiongjiwu up from the ground with his right hand. He smiled and said to Xiongjiwu, "There will be a way. As long as you work hard, there will be a way." However, Poplar Fruit did not directly tell Xiongjiwu his thoughts. He did not wait for Xiongjiwu to ask, and said another topic. "By the way, do you know where I can get a mobile phone signal nearby? I want to find someone to tow the car back for repair." Seeing that Xiongjiwu's eyes began to worry again, Poplar Fruit patted him on the shoulder with a smile and said, "Don't worry, you don't have to pay for it. I bought insurance." Xiongjiwu took Poplar Fruit to the mountain road 200 meters away. Poplar Fruit found a mobile phone signal with difficulty. This was enough. Poplar Fruit dialed the insurance company's number and asked them to find someone to tow the car back for repair. He did not know if Poplar Fruit had bought the highest level of insurance, but the insurance company arrived very quickly. Poplar Fruit did not wait for 40 minutes before the insurance company's people arrived at the scene with difficulty in 2 tow trucks. Poplar Fruit packed up his belongings and instructed the insurance company to tow his beloved car away. "Sir, do you want to go back with our car?" Not only did the insurance company not make things difficult for Poplar Fruit, but they also respectfully provided all the services they could provide to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit did not know that his treatment was already rare in the world. He thought that all insurance companies treated him the same way. He silently gave the insurance company a thumbs up. However, he still refused. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No need, we still have things to do." After the people from the insurance company left, Poplar Fruit turned to Xiongjiwu, who had been silent, and said with a smile, "Let's go to your house." "To my house." Xiongjiwu felt that he was already grateful that Poplar Fruit didn't find trouble with him. He didn't expect that Poplar Fruit would make such an unexpected request. Therefore, after hearing this, Xiongjiwu asked in surprise. "Yes." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "If we don't go to your house, how do I know if what you told me is true?" "Don't worry." Poplar Fruit saw that Xiongjiwu was still in fear and trepidation. He patted Xiongjiwu on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Just treat it as a home visit. If what you said is true, I might be able to help you a little." Xiongjiwu was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. He stood there stupidly for a while, and then his expression turned into ecstasy. Xiongjiwu could see that Poplar Fruit was not a simple person from his car, dress, and belongings. Poplar Fruit said that he might be able to help a little. Then there might be hope for his wife's illness. "Let's go. Don't stand there stupidly." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Do you have a car? The two of us can't handle so much luggage now." Although the souvenirs that Poplar Fruit bought along the way were directly sent home by express delivery, there were still a lot of luggage moved out of the car. They were piled up in the grass on the side of the road. At this time, Jinzi was still guarding the luggage loyally. "Car?" Xiongjiwu was in a dilemma. He scratched his head and said, "The cattle at home have been sold. We don't have a car. I'm going to faint. Yanggua knew this would happen, so she asked the insurance company to move some things back. Now, it was impossible for the two of them to move all the things. Why don't we hide some in the cave first? We can take them when we come back? Xiong Jiwu asked with some embarrassment. Cave? Where is the cave? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Xiong Jiwu took Poplar Fruit for 200 meters in the mountain forest. He lay on the ground and touched left and right. He didn't know where he found a rope. He pulled it gently, and a woven wall that looked like a wall covered with creepers opened like a door. A dark cave suddenly appeared. This is the cave that I found after a long time of searching, Xiong Jiwu said with some pride. Put the things inside and no one will find it. Poplar Fruit looked around curiously and found that the cave was about 5 or 6 square meters, but it was covered with hay. Although it was a little dark, the environment was still okay. Poplar Fruit even saw traces of people living here. I have been living here for the past 2 days outside, Xiong Jiwu said with some embarrassment. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, Everyone makes mistakes. Let's not talk about the past. When they returned to the original place, Poplar Fruit moved the mountain-like luggage back and forth twice. He only brought a school bag and a suitcase with him, which mainly contained some daily necessities and Kiki's things. Of course, Poplar Fruit also brought his and Kiki's sleeping bags. Looking at this, they were going to spend the night in Meng Village. The environment was definitely not as good as a hotel, so maybe the sleeping bags would come in handy. Let me help you carry it. Xiong Jiwu limped over and insisted on helping Poplar Fruit carry the suitcase and 2 sleeping bags. However, it was inconvenient for him to carry so many things, so it was a little difficult. Poplar Fruit smiled and grabbed the heavy suitcase. He said, You don't have to do this. It's just a suitcase. I can still pull it. Don't think that it was easy to pull a suitcase. In fact, when they walked uphill on the mountain road, every meter they walked vertically would consume the same amount of energy. Xiong Jiwu looked at Poplar Fruit's relaxed manner and scratched his head in shame. He quickly carried the 2 light sleeping bags and walked in front of Poplar Fruit to lead the way. Kiki lay on her father's left shoulder. Sometimes she looked at Goldie, who was following them, and sometimes she kept looking at the surrounding environment. They had really entered a mountainous area, and when they reached the middle, the flat road had disappeared, leaving only a small path in the forest made by people and ox carts. Poplar Fruit finally understood what it meant to be in a mountainous area. After walking a few kilometers of mountain road, they still had to cross a long suspension bridge hanging high between 2 mountains, and this was only half of the journey. His hometown in the rural area of Guangdong province was already a paradise. Chapter 503. After leaving the highway, Poplar Fruit followed Xiong Jiwu and walked for more than an hour on the mountain road before they arrived at the Meng village where he was. It was not just a matter of time, but also the hardships of trekking through mountains and rivers. Those who had not experienced it could not imagine it. Especially the hanging bridge in the middle, which was hundreds of meters high in the air. They might fall off the cliff if they took a wrong step. Poplar Fruit hugged Kiki tightly with one hand and pulled the iron chain with the other hand to walk over. Xiong Jiwu had to go back and forth 3 times to carry the luggage, while Gold was curled up in Poplar Fruit's school bag and did not dare to move. The Meng village was hidden deep in the mountains. It was said that the Meng people settled here to escape the war, but now it had become their shackles. On the one hand, it was their homeland, the foundation of their ancestors, which was impossible to give up. On the other hand, it was too remote and could not obtain the conditions to live in the modern world. The only thing that could connect the Meng village with the modern world was that it had electricity and phones. Some of their relatives who worked outside brought back cheap functional phones. However, this place seemed to be decades behind. There was not even a TV, let alone a computer. Poplar Fruit followed Xiong Jiwu through the middle of the village and found that most of the people he could see were old people, women, and children. However, he felt relieved after thinking about it for a while. Xiong Jiwu had a good interpersonal relationship in the village. His neighbors greeted him again, and Poplar Fruit nodded to them with a smile. However, most of the Hmong people looked at him with strange and fresh eyes. Xiongjiwu was worried that poplar fruit would feel uncomfortable, so he apologized to poplar fruit. There are very few outsiders here, so they look at you like that. Poplar fruit smiled and waved his hand, indicating that he did not care. When they were about to reach his home, Xiongjiwu's expression became eager. He kept looking into the distance, wanting to see the familiar figures of his family. Uncle Jiwu, have you found the money? At this time, Xiongjiwu met an acquaintance from the same clan. It was his niece of the same age but different generation. When she saw Xiongjiwu coming back, she rushed to the window with the child in her arms and asked in a rough voice. Not yet, but I may have met a benefactor. Maybe there is a way. Xiongjiwu said without any sadness or joy. They were speaking in Miao language. Poplar fruit had never learned it before, so of course he couldn't understand. Let's do it, Dad. Xiongjiwu's door suddenly opened, and a voice as clear as a lark's came out. Xiongjiwu didn't know if that person had heard his voice. Poplar fruit looked up and saw a small but beautiful my daughter jumping out of the door and pouncing on Xiongjiwu with a worried look. The little girl looked like she was only 12 or 13 years old, but the burden of life had made her every move look like a mature little adult. This should be the most outstanding daughter in Xiongjiwu's heart, Xiong Xiaolin. Xiongjiwu went out this time and experienced a lot. When he saw his daughter, his tears almost burst out again. But in front of his daughter, he had to show a stable posture of being the family's pillar. Therefore, he just carried Poplar Fruit's sleeping bag, held his daughter's head with one hand, and then took a deep breath to calm his surging mood. Poplar Fruit saw deep affection in Xiongjiwu's eyes. Although Xiongjiwu didn't know how to express it, Poplar Fruit, who was also a father of a girl, knew that it was love. After waiting for a while with a smile, Yanghua saw that Xiongjiwu turned his head and pulled his daughter to introduce her to them. Yanghua, this is my eldest daughter Xiong Xiaolin, whom I told you about before. They learned each other's names on the way here. Xiaolin, this is Uncle Poplar Fruit, quickly call him Uncle. At first, Xiong Xiaolin was a little vigilant when she saw Poplar Fruit. Although she was young, she knew a lot of things. She had seen too many families in her village or other nearby Miao villages that had to marry their daughters to others in exchange for rich betrothal gifts, because their families were poor. But after hearing her father's introduction and seeing the little girl in Poplar Fruit's arms, she slowly let down her guard. But even so, Xiong Xiaolin was still a little shy. She leaned on her father's body, smiled shyly and greeted Poplar Fruit. Hello Xiaolin, this is Uncle's daughter Kiki. Kiki, you should also call her sister. Poplar Fruit held Kiki's hand and smiled. Sister. Although Kiki was more shy than Xiong Xiaolin, in her father's arms, she always had more courage. However, when Poplar Fruit put her on the ground, she became timid again. She turned around, hugged her father's long legs, and looked at him timidly. Sister Kiki, hello. Xiong Xiaolin hesitated for a moment, then she walked in front of Kiki and stretched out a hand in a friendly manner. Poplar Fruit saw that Xiong Xiaolin was wearing a thin but delicate silver bracelet on her wrist. This was probably the only jewelry from the Miao tribe that she had on her. Don't think that all the girls from the Miao tribe could be like on TV, with silver crowns, silver necklaces, shawls, necklaces, toothpicks, hairpins, earrings, bracelets, rings, and so on. When they walked out of the house, they would be dazzling. In the poor mountainous areas, not to mention jewelry, it was already very fortunate to have a beautiful embroidered pleated skirt. This was something that was only worn during festive occasions. Xiong Xiaolin's Mandarin was a little better than Xiongjiwu's, but she still had a heavy accent. This was probably due to the education gap in remote areas. Seeing Xiong Xiaolin's sister's kindness, Kiki hesitated. She looked up at her father and saw him nodding at her with a smile. Kiki hesitantly stretched out a white and tender hand and placed it in Xiong Xiaolin's palm. However, she didn't dare to leave her father's side. Her other hand was still grabbing onto Poplar Fruit's trousers. Poplar Fruit smiled and squatted down again. He stretched his hand into the backpack behind him and gently pulled out the lazy dog Gold that refused to come out. After Gold came out, it shook its body and then ran to Kiki's side to please her. Only then did it look at the surrounding environment. Poplar Fruit's choice was correct. After Gold ran out, Xiong Xiaolin and Kiki's attention was attracted to it. My daughters seemed to have a common topic and gradually began to chat with each other. Xiong Ji-woo led Poplar Fruit and the others into their family's small wooden house. Xiong Ji-woo's house was actually very big. The two-story wooden house added up to a few hundred square meters. However, the house here didn't have much value. Moreover, it seemed that this small wooden house was quite old. It was probably built by Xiong Ji-woo's ancestors. After Poplar Fruit went in, Xiong Ji-woo hurriedly asked Poplar Fruit to sit down, and then brewed some oil tea for Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit could already see that Xiong Ji-woo was absent-minded. This man with a congenital disease was now completely worried about his bedridden wife. If it weren't for the fact that he had to entertain Poplar Fruit, he would have gone straight to the bedroom as soon as he entered the house. Chapter 504. Poplar Fruit could see the anxiety in Xiong Ji-woo's heart, so he took the initiative to persuade him to visit his wife first. Xiong Ji-woo hesitated for a moment, but he did not refuse. He turned around and went into the bedroom. Xiaolin. Poplar Fruit looked at Xiong Xiaolin, who was squatting and whispering to Kiki, who was touching Goldie's back, and called her with a smile. Xiong Xiaolin looked up at Poplar Fruit with a little shyness in her eyes. But now, apart from her father, she was the only one who could carry the family. So when she heard Poplar Fruit's call, she stood up timidly, but summoned up the courage to ask, "Uncle Poplar Fruit, do you want to drink water? I'll go and pour it for you now." Although Xiong Ji-woo was born with a disability, and because of the pressure of life, he was dark and thin, he was quite good-looking. He was considered handsome in the Hmong village. Xiong Xiaolin, on the other hand, had inherited Xiong Ji-woo's delicate and pretty facial features. Although she was young, she was like an orchid in the deep mountains. If not for the shabby clothes on her body, she would definitely be a little beauty. Poplar Fruit valued Xiong Xiaolin's eyes the most. It was not that they were beautiful, but it was really not easy to see the determination and unyielding light in a child's eyes. What made Poplar Fruit sigh even more was that this girl was a very smart child. Poplar Fruit did not see confusion in her eyes, but a maturity that did not belong to her age. "No, uncle is not thirsty." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I heard from your father that you were admitted to the best junior high school in the county. Can you tell uncle why you don't want to go to school?" "Mom is sick, and I want to leave money for her treatment," Xiong Xiaolin said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Yang Guo was very surprised. From Xiong Xiaolin's voice, he didn't hear any grievances, nor did he hear any dissatisfaction. Could it be that she really didn't want to give up her future? Then what do you want to do in the future? What if you don't study? Poplar Fruit asked. "I think I should go out to work." Xiong Xiaolin looked down at her toes and whispered, "My brother has to go to school, and my mother has to recuperate. I have to help my father make money." What a sensible child. Poplar Fruit was shocked. He hesitated for a moment and asked, "But you're only 12 or 13 years old. You're not old enough to work. They don't want child labor." "I'm already 14, almost 15. Xiong Xiaolin raised her head and looked at Poplar Fruit stubbornly. "Moreover, I'm tall. If you tell them that I'm an adult, they'll want me." Many brothers and sisters in the village went out early. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Wait a minute, there are a lot of questions. Let's go through them one by one. You said you're almost 15 years old? How could this be? How come you just graduated from primary school, when you're only 15? After a moment of silence, Xiong Xiaolin said, "I studied for 8 years in primary school." Poplar Fruit finally understood the reason behind this from Xiong Xiaolin's explanation. It turned out that the village was too far away from the nearby towns. It would take half a day to walk to the road outside. The people in the village did not have a car, and they were reluctant to spend money to take a bus. It would take at least a day to walk to the town. The children in the village were all poor. It was impossible for them to afford to send them to the primary school in the town. Therefore, their only hope of studying was in their own primary school in the Hmong village. Speaking of which, the village where the 5 families of Xiongji lived was the closest to the outside world. It was close to the mountains, so the town set up a primary school there, and sent a few teachers to teach there. The children in the other villages even had to walk for 2 hours on the mountain road to go to school. Although there were only a few teachers, the village was too remote and difficult. Year after year, the number of teachers decreased. Those who had connections had left, and the teachers outside did not dare to come over after hearing about it. They came to the remote mountainous area to teach. The salary was low, and they were not part of the normal teacher system. They could only be private teachers. It was extremely difficult to solve the problem. The village had reported to the last remaining teacher several times, but it was still not solved. Who would dare to come over? Therefore, Xiong Xiaolin studied for 8 years. The first 2 years were taught by 2 teachers. For the next 2 years, only the old teacher was left. In the next 2 years, the old teacher suffered from a serious liver disease, so he retired early and went back to the city to treat his illness. During these 2 years of recuperation, the primary school in the Hmong village no longer had any teachers. The primary school in the Hmong village was in a state of emptiness. All the children did not study and could only help their families. After 2 years, the village chief in the village felt that this was not a solution. He went to the city to find the old teacher to help him think of a solution. At that time, the retired old teacher was already a model worker in the county. For the sake of the Hmong village, he ran around the county and the city several times. However, there was still no news from the future teacher. This made the old teacher so worried that his hair turned white. In the end, the old teacher resolutely returned to the Hmong village and continued to teach the children. Unfortunately, after the new year, the old teacher taught for half a month before he passed away on the podium forever. On that day, white silk flowers bloomed all over the hillside. However, there was no sign of the gardener who was diligent in watering the flowers. After the old teacher left, Xiong Xiaolin, who had the best grades, continued to study with her younger brothers and sisters. A few of the children who took the primary school examination even got good results. This might be the best sacrifice for the old teacher. Hearing this, Poplar Fruit felt tears welling up in his eyes. On one hand, it was because of the old teacher who dedicated his life to educating the children in the remote mountainous area. On the other hand, it was because of these poor but strong children. Poplar Fruit and Kiki felt sad when they heard this. However, Xiong Xiaolin was very calm when she was talking about the old teacher's death. She was a little depressed. Poplar Fruit could guess that Xiong Xiaolin had experienced too many unequal lives and setbacks in life. What about the children in the village now? Are they still going to study? Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment before he asked the question that he had already guessed the answer to. There's no more. Xiong Xiaolin shook her head. There's no teacher. The uncles and aunties have asked them to go back to help with the housework. Yes, without a teacher to teach them, the initial hope of the parents was also shattered. Instead of letting the children wander aimlessly, it was better for them to follow the old path of the adults, either farming or going out to work. Generation after generation, this was the fate of the farmers in the mountainous area. Very, very few could seize the opportunity and achieve success. Most people spent their lives working hard to make a living. Poplar Fruit fell into silence. Xiong Xiaolin hesitated for a moment. She reached out to Kiki, who was dressed like a little princess, and pulled her to the side to play. She did not want to disturb Poplar Fruit. However, she still did not know that Poplar Fruit might be the one who could change the course of their lives. Chapter 505. After arriving at the Hmong village, Poplar Fruit was basically sure that Xiong Jiwu was not lying to him. Then he followed Xiong Jiwu to visit his wife. Seeing the emaciated woman lying on the bed, Poplar Fruit sighed and thought to himself, too miserable. Xiong Jiwu's wife was called Yinuzang. She was also from the Hmong tribe, but from another Hmong village. If it weren't for the fact that she was weak and sick, her family wouldn't have agreed to let her marry the disabled Xiong Jiwu. Yinuzang was originally petite. Now that she was sick, she had been tortured to the point where she didn't look like a human anymore. Seeing that her hand was so thin that it looked like there were only bones left, Poplar Fruit felt sad. Sister-in-law, don't move. Just lie down, Poplar Fruit said quickly. He also signaled Xiong Jiwu to hold down the weak Yinuzang. In front of Yinuzang and Xiong Jiwu's family, Poplar Fruit just chatted a little. When he talked about his origin, Poplar Fruit said with a smile, I was originally a tourist. I brought my daughter here to play, but I accidentally got lost in the mountains. It was Brother Xiong who found me and brought me out. Xiong Jiwu looked at Poplar Fruit gratefully. He didn't expect that Poplar Fruit would still care about his family's feelings after he had offended Poplar Fruit by robbing him. He was really too kind. Because the sun was about to set, Poplar Fruit came out with Xiong Jiwu and said to him, Brother Xiong, sister-in-law's condition is not very good. I don't think we can endure it anymore. Tomorrow, you and I will take sister-in-law out of the mountain to treat her illness. Seeing that Xiong Jiwu wanted to say something but stopped, Poplar Fruit patted him on the shoulder with a smile and said, Don't worry, I will pay for all the expenses. Xiong Jiwu took Poplar Fruit's hand and was so grateful that he didn't know what to say. He choked and almost cried again. Dad, what's wrong with you? When Xiong Xiaolin saw Xiong Jiwu's appearance, she ran over worriedly and asked while pulling Xiong Jiwu's clothes. It's okay. Daddy is happy. Xiong Jiwu rubbed the corners of his eyes, put his big hand on his daughter's head, and said with a smile, Your mother's illness can be cured. Your uncle Poplar Fruit said that he would take your mother to see a doctor tomorrow. Don't worry about money. Poplar Fruit patted Xiong Xiaolin's shoulder with a smile and said, Uncle Poplar Fruit promises to give you a healthy mother. Also, hurry up and get the torn notice back. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, When school starts next month, you have to be obedient and study. You know your father is counting on you. But what about my brother? Xiong Xiaolin thought that if she went out to study, there would be no one to take care of her brother at home. Her younger brother had just returned from playing outside. Compared to Xiong Xiaolin, Xiong Xiaofeng was much more shy and had been hiding at the side. Xiong Xiaofeng was also in the 3rd grade of primary school this year. His grades were very average. Without a teacher, his studies were very problematic. We will think of a way later. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, The solution is thought of by people. I don't believe that the country can't solve the academic problems of so many children. In fact, the country really couldn't solve it. Otherwise, the old teacher wouldn't have hit so many walls. As for the teachers in the border areas, they had all gone to the northwestern areas like Tibet. Like the mountainous areas of Guishan province, there were no policies and no funds. The local government didn't even care about getting rid of the poverty label, so how could they have the time to care about them? In the evening, Poplar Fruit and Kiki stayed at the Xiong family's house. Because they heard that there was a handsome Han man outside, many people in the Hmong village came to greet him warmly, so Poplar Fruit couldn't stop eating. The people in the Hmong village brought some delicious fruits over, but the food in the Xiong family's house was still very simple, even though Xiong Jiwu also rummaged through the cabinets to look for ingredients. Poplar Fruit could understand the situation very well. The Xiong family and the entire Hmong village were very poor, so he didn't expect to be able to have a big meal here. Don't bother. You can keep the chicken. When sister-in-law comes back from her treatment, you can give it to her to nourish her body. Poplar Fruit smiled and stopped Xiong Jiwu, who was about to kill the old hen at home, and said, Just eat something simple. After dinner, Poplar Fruit missed Fong Bebe, so he took his mobile phone to the balcony and called her. Uncle, have you arrived in Chong City? Fong Bebe asked with a smile when she picked up the phone. She knew that Poplar Fruit had gone the wrong way 2 days ago. Hey, don't mention it. We have to stay in the mountains for a night. Poplar Fruit laughed. What's wrong? Did something happen? Did you lose your way again? Fong Bebe checked the map. The place where Poplar Fruit and Kiki stayed yesterday was at most half a day's drive away from Chong City. How could it be so late? I didn't lose my way. Poplar Fruit smiled. He turned his head and saw that no one was listening to him on the phone. Then he told Fong Bebe about the twists and turns of today's experience. Road robber? Did you get into a car accident? Hearing that Poplar Fruit was in a car accident because of Xiong Jiwu, Fong Bebe was very nervous. Her voice rose an octave. Are you hurt? Fong Bebe breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that Poplar Fruit, Kiki, and Goldie were all fine. As for the poor Land Rover, Fong Bebe didn't care about it at all. Then, after listening to Poplar Fruit tell the story of the Xiong family, the kind-hearted Fong Bebe burst into tears. Uncle, they are so pitiful. You must help them. Don't cry. Poplar Fruit heard Fong Beibei crying. He felt bad and said quickly, I did help them. I just said that I would take them to see a doctor tomorrow. Do you have enough money? I have a lot here. Do you want me to give them all to you? Fong Beibei said on the phone. Poplar Fruit laughed and scolded her lovingly. Silly, how can I not have money? I have enough. Don't worry. It's not a terminal illness. It won't cost much. I heard from Xiong Jiwu that if it's treated in time, it won't be a big problem. And you also have to be careful. You just said that you must hold the suspension bridge well. Don't try to be brave. Fong Beibei was still worried. Because Fong Beibei still had to review. Poplar Fruit hung up the phone very early. However, Fong Beibei's concern made Poplar Fruit feel energized. Until he entered the house, the corner of his mouth could not help but curl up. He was in a wonderful mood. Back in the house, Poplar Fruit saw that Kiki was still chatting with Xiong Xiaolin. What are you talking about? Poplar Fruit sat down with a smile and asked. Papa, Sister Xiaolin taught me how to speak Miao language. Kiki ran over and held Poplar Fruit's hand and happily said, Oh, is that so? Then what Miao language did Kiki learn? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Kiki learned a lot. Kiki waved her little hand and excitedly gestured. Oh no, it's Papa's idea. And Xiaolin Yagua. Kiki learns very fast. Xiong Xiaolin sat sideways on the ground and said with some embarrassment. Chapter 506. The next morning, Poplar Fruit woke up very early. However, because it was a relatively unfamiliar environment, Poplar Fruit did not go outside to practice martial arts. Instead, he climbed out of his sleeping bag and went to the balcony to look at the misty mountains and breathe in the fresh morning air. The first one to wake up in the Xiong family was not Xiong Jiwu, who Poplar Fruit thought, but the young Xiong siblings. Xiong Xiaofeng was dragged out of the warm bed by his sister. He rubbed his face with the cold stream water in a daze, then picked up a textbook and read with his sister. At first, Xiong Xiaofeng followed Xiong Xiaolin as she read a sentence. Poplar Fruit stood on the balcony on the second floor and listened carefully for a while. He heard Xiong Xiaofeng's impatience. However, Xiong Xiaolin was still very prestigious in front of her brother. She grabbed Xiong Xiaofeng's collar and pressed him on the stool. Xiong Xiaofeng had to read obediently. After reading for more than half an hour, Xiong Jiwu woke up and began to chop wood and boil water. At this time, Xiong Xiaofeng could not sit still. He used the excuse that he was going to help his father and escaped from his sister's control. Poplar Fruit did not understand the Miao language, but according to the few words he learned yesterday, Poplar Fruit could roughly judge that Xiong Xiaofeng was going to be lazy. Poplar Fruit stood on the balcony on the second floor and smiled at the happy time of the family. The Xiong siblings downstairs did not notice that Poplar Fruit had woken up. After Xiong Xiaofeng ran away, Xiong Xiaolin took out an English textbook from the old but clean green canvas bag next to her and began to read. The education level of the children in the mountains was certainly not as good as that of the children in the city. For example, in Yangcheng, where Poplar Fruit lived, the children had already participated in various English cram schools before going to school. Their English was very fluent. In the mountains, their English textbooks were only available in the 5th grade. Even so, many people did not know if they had the opportunity to learn a few words of English when they graduated from primary school. In this regard, the education of the children in the mountain areas was far behind. After listening for a while, Yanggua's eyebrows knitted together. He did not care much about other subjects, but English was Poplar Fruit's specialty. Poplar Fruit's ears were extremely picky when it came to English. Your pronunciation isn't accurate. Poplar Fruit gave Xiong Xiaolin's English pronunciation a big cross in his heart. How did your teacher teach you in the past? You can pronounce voiceless consonants as voice consonants? However, thinking of the old teacher's story, Poplar Fruit fell silent again. It was already very difficult for the elderly to teach him a few sentences of English. Although there were not that many subjects in primary school, would an elderly person be able to handle teaching Chinese, mathematics, and English? That being said, Poplar Fruit could understand the old teacher's difficulties, but he could not tolerate Xiong Xiaolin's strange accent. He ran down the stairs. "Uncle Poplar Fruit, you're awake?" When Xiong Xiaolin saw Poplar Fruit come down, she quickly stood up from the small bench. She closed the textbook, but did not know where to put her hands. Poplar Fruit waved his hand and smiled. "I've been awake for a long time. You don't have to stand up. Continue reading. Uncle came down to teach you how to read English." "Really?" Xiong Xiaolin's eyes flashed with surprise. She did not know that Poplar Fruit's English was already at the level of a professor, but she knew that the people from the city must be very good. Poplar Fruit did not want to talk nonsense with her. He went straight to the point and said, "There's a problem with your pronunciation. Let's start from the phonetic transcription." After switching to teacher mode, Yangguo's entire body exuded a kind of captivating charm, as well as an irresistible majesty. Xiong Jiwu heard the noise and poked his head out of the kitchen. He originally wanted to say hello to Poplar Fruit, but when he saw Poplar Fruit's appearance, Xiong Jiwu shrank his head and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. If Poplar Fruit was said to be the most teacher-like teacher, then Xiong Xiaolin was the best student. She also quickly entered into a learning mode. While listening attentively to Poplar Fruit's teachings, she also practiced the most basic phonetic transcription earnestly. "No, there's a tongue here. Your tongue should press against the roof of your mouth, and then break out the sound." Poplar Fruit was still dissatisfied and interrupted Xiong Xiaolin again. Xiong Xiaolin's enthusiasm for learning was very good, but her talent in learning English was still a little lacking. Her tongue was very stiff like a beginner's. She could often remember how to pronounce the words, but her tongue could not keep up with her consciousness. Poplar Fruit was a little anxious for her. However, after teaching for a while, Poplar Fruit figured it out by himself. It turned out that he was too anxious for success. For Xiong Xiaolin, her English did not have a solid foundation like the children in the city. It was really not easy for her to learn it well in a short period of time. Xiong Xiaolin knew that she had disappointed Uncle Poplar Fruit. She bit her lower lip and tried hard to correct her mistake. Although her progress was very slow, Poplar Fruit saw another advantage of Xiong Xiaolin. Diligence could make up for stupidity. When she was taught by Poplar Fruit, she carefully recorded every word that Poplar Fruit said. When she practiced, she was also very serious. No matter how slow she learned, Poplar Fruit firmly believed that she would be able to learn successfully. After teaching for half an hour, Poplar Fruit went upstairs to wake Kiki up. Kiki, who was wrapped in a fluffy little coat, sat next to her in a daze and listened to her father teach Sister Xiaolin. After talking about some basics, Poplar Fruit began to teach Xiong Xiaolin how to use specific words to practice pronunciation. At this point, Kiki began to feel that it was familiar because she knew some of the words. Apple. Kiki really likes apples. Kiki suddenly danced with joy and suddenly said such a sentence. Little sister Kiki is so amazing. Xiong Xiaolin looked at Kiki enviously. She had just been called Granny and was scolded by Poplar Fruit. She didn't expect that a child who was much younger than her could pronounce better than her. Were all the children in the city so good? Then what was the point of learning? It seemed like she couldn't catch up at all. Xiong Xiaolin fell into a state of disappointment and helplessness. Poplar Fruit looked at her appearance and sighed softly in his heart. He said, "Xiaolin, don't be discouraged. As long as you continue to work hard, you will definitely be able to pronounce it well." Poplar Fruit told Xiong Xiaolin his own story. When he was studying in the city's high school, he also found that the other city students in his class were very mature and knew a lot of things. However, after 3 years of hard work, the gap between him and the city students was almost closed. Xiong Xiaolin looked at Poplar Fruit with some admiration and clenched her fist hard. She was reinvigorated by Poplar Fruit's story. Poplar Fruit's uncle, who came from the countryside, could achieve such great success. If she worked harder, she would definitely be able to do it. This experience was real. Poplar Fruit didn't lie through his teeth, but Poplar Fruit hid a fact. The gap between him and the city's children was far smaller than the gap between Xiong Xiaolin and the city's children. After all, Guangdong province was a more economically developed area. Even in the countryside, people knew more about the outside world than in the mountainous areas. Naturally, the education level wouldn't be too far off. Chapter 507. Before breakfast was ready, Poplar Fruit gave Xiong Xiaolin a basic English lesson. In fact, Poplar Fruit himself was a little surprised that he could teach this boring knowledge of phonetic symbols. If it was 5 years ago, when Poplar Fruit was still in college and had a lot of part-time tutoring, Poplar Fruit would never reach the level of interesting. Although Chi-Chi had been fooling around the entire time, Xiong Xiaolin was completely engrossed in the story. In the end, she kept her head down as she listened and took notes at the same time. Chi-Chi didn't even react when she poked her waist from behind. The most powerful evidence was that Xiong Xiaofeng, who had slipped into the kitchen to slack off, slowly moved back and joined them without blinking. Poplar Fruit's rich knowledge reserve and sensitive thinking were the reasons why he had made great progress in his attempt to be a teacher again. Although he didn't dare to say that a lesson could bring about tremendous progress for Xiong Xiaolin, Poplar Fruit felt that Xiong Xiaolin and the others listened with great interest, which was a great sense of accomplishment. Breakfast was very thin rice porridge with a few weed-like vegetables floating on top. Xiong Jiwu had already sprinkled some soybean oil in it, but it still didn't look appetizing. Even Poplar Fruit, who also came from the countryside, felt that the porridge was too shabby. But the Xiong family couldn't come up with anything better to entertain Poplar Fruit. Seeing that Poplar Fruit was a little hesitant, Xiong Jiwu looked at Poplar Fruit apologetically. Poplar Fruit laughed and waved at him, then picked up a bowl of porridge and took a sip. It was true that the porridge without the smell of meat didn't taste good, but the vegetables still fully embellished the taste of the porridge. The strong taste of the vegetables was a highlight. After Kiki drank a mouthful, she was unwilling to open her mouth to drink a second mouthful. Poplar Fruit had no choice but to take out a small can of milk powder that he carried with him, and mixed it with hot water for her to drink. Seeing the Xiong siblings' curious and longing eyes, Poplar Fruit also made a big bowl for each of them. Because he didn't know if Yi Nuzhang's illness could stand the milk, and Xiong Jiwu also brought the porridge back to the house, Xiong Jiwu didn't make the third bowl of Poplar Fruit. Looking back, Xiong Xiaofeng had already greedily finished his big bowl of milk in big gulps. He had never tasted the fragrance of milk before. There were no cows in the mountains. It floated in his stomach and mind. He drank too fast and couldn't help burping, but this feeling was really memorable. Xiong Xiaofeng licked his lips and couldn't help but look at his sister. Xiong Xiaolin couldn't bear to drink it too quickly. She tasted it in small mouthfuls, as if each mouthful was the last one in her life. She wanted to remember the taste of the milk forever. Xiong Xiaolin quickly felt her brother's gaze. At this time, she only drank a little more than half a bowl of milk. Xiong Xiaolin raised her head and looked at her brother's longing eyes. Her heart was also struggling. In the end, Xiong Xiaolin reluctantly pushed the milk in her arms in front of her brother and whispered, "I'm full, you drink it." Xiong Xiaofeng hesitated for a moment, but his gluttonous nature finally prevailed. He held up the milk that his sister gave him. This time he didn't drink it in such a hurry. As if he was learning from his sister, he drank it in small mouthfuls. Xiong Xiaolin secretly pulled over the big bowl that her brother drank from before. Seeing that there were still a few drops of milk left in it, she picked it up, raised her head, and drank the dripping milk. In the end, she reluctantly licked the big bowl. Her delicate tongue stretched out and curled back like a cute little wild cat. When Xiong Xiaolin put down the bowl, she remembered that Poplar Fruit and the rest were still sitting next to her. She turned her head and saw Poplar Fruit and Kiki looking at her in shock. Xiong Xiaolin's face immediately turned red. She embarrassedly put down the bowl and hung her head in front of her chest. She didn't dare to look into Poplar Fruit's eyes anymore. Although he didn't understand what Xiong Xiaolin meant when she handed her milk to her brother, Poplar Fruit was still touched by Xiong Xiaolin's modesty. Actually, Poplar Fruit could have made another bowl of milk for Xiong Xiaolin. If they were in the city, Poplar Fruit would have done so. However, this time, Poplar Fruit didn't bring much milk powder to the Meng stockade. The rest was left in the cave. Poplar Fruit had to use it sparingly. From the looks of it, Kiki's rations would have to depend on this small bottle of milk powder. After dinner, Poplar Fruit received a call from his teacher, Chen Zongdai. Chen Zongdai had already arrived in Cheng City the day before yesterday. He was impatiently waiting for him. "Teacher, I still need 2 more days to go. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said to Chen Zongdai. He planned to take Yinuzhang out of the mountain with Xiong Jiwu today to see a doctor. It would take at least 2 days to arrange for her hospitalization and surgery. What's going on? Aren't you already in Chong City? Chen Zongdai scolded furiously. The meeting is about to start. Where are you going? Poplar Fruit calculated the schedule that his teacher gave him and was shocked. There was a banquet before the meeting tomorrow night. The meeting would start the day after tomorrow. He actually forgot about it. However, Poplar Fruit didn't want to break his promise. He didn't arrange everything for Xiong Xiaolan's mother. Poplar Fruit felt really bad. After telling Chen Zongdai about this, Chen Zongdai was silent for a while. He said slowly, "What you did was right. A person should have a loving heart. If it were me, I would also help." Yes. The main thing is that her illness can't be delayed any longer. If it is delayed, her life will really be in danger. Poplar Fruit said worriedly. Then it's like this. Chen Zongdai said firmly. You bring her to Chong City today. I will ask my old classmates at Chong City University to arrange a hospital for you. The medical conditions in Chong City will definitely be better than in your small county. If she comes to Chong City, you won't have to worry about delaying the meeting. Really? Poplar Fruit asked happily. It wasn't that he didn't think of bringing Yinuzhang to a big city to see a doctor, but the problem was that he didn't know anyone in Guishan province. It would be difficult to make arrangements. Why didn't he think of having such a powerful teacher? Chen Zongdai was indeed well connected. He had a high academic status in the country. He was the leader of the Functional Linguistics Association. He had been studying for 40 years and had students all over the world. If it weren't for his personality, which was only suitable for research institutes, how could Chen Zongdai still be a small director? Chen Zongdai didn't waste time with him. He said, "Okay, don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and send her to Chong City. I will arrange it for you now." Okay. Poplar Fruit happily put down the phone and waved his fist happily. There was always a way out. It was true. Back in the lobby, Poplar Fruit saw Xiong Xiaolan playing a girl's favorite game with Kiki. Kiki's bell-like laughter filled the entire Meow family's small wooden house. Seeing Kiki's happy face, Poplar Fruit smiled knowingly. Ah. Oh right. Poplar Fruit suddenly looked at Xiong Xiaolan with shining eyes. He had an idea in his mind. Chapter 508. He called Xiong Jiwu, who had been worried and restless for a long time over. Poplar Fruit looked at Xiong Jiwu's expectant and worried expression. He smiled and said, "Brother Xiong, let's pack up now and leave the mountain as soon as possible." "Oh okay. Xiong Jiwu rubbed his hands on his body and quickly replied. "I have a proposal now." Poplar Fruit pulled him and said, "You two go to Chong City with me. I'll find someone to arrange for sister-in-law to be treated in a big hospital in Chong City. What do you think?" Chong City? Xiong Jiwu opened his mouth. In his mind, Chong City, a huge municipality, could be said to be an unattainable existence. He hesitated and said, That will cost a lot of money." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "Brother Xiong, don't worry about money. I'll pay for the expenses of going to Chong City. Moreover, you know that the sooner sister-in-law's illness is treated, the better. The medical level in Chong City is definitely better than in the county. After the operation, sister-in-law can recover earlier. Isn't this less painful?" Xiong Jiwu was moved. He rubbed his hands hard and stammered, "Poplar Fruit, Brother Yang, I don't know how to thank you." Poplar Fruit patted him on the shoulder and smiled slightly. "You don't have to thank me. As long as you live a good life and take good care of your 2 children in the future, it will be fine." Yes. Xiong Jiwu nodded. He turned his head and found that Xiong Xiaolan and Xiong Xiaofeng were not in the mood to play. The 2 children were looking at him and Poplar Fruit eagerly. Last night, Xiong Jiwu secretly told them about this matter. Xiong Xiaolan and Xiong Xiaofeng, who had been thinking about their mother's illness, had been looking forward to Poplar Fruit's late arrangement for a long time. "Xiaolan." Xiong Jiwu reached out and pulled Xiong Xiaolan over. He gently patted his daughter's headscarf and said, "You heard it. Dad is going to take Mom out to treat her illness. It may take a few days before we come back. During this time, you have to help Dad take care of your brother at home, okay? Xiong Xiaolin nodded with reddened eyes. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "No need. Xiaolin, you have to come with us to see the world." Ah. This time, Xiong Jiwu and Xiong Xiaolin both looked at Poplar Fruit in surprise. Xiong Xiaofeng muttered in a low voice, "Uncle, I also want to go to the big city to take a look." These were his heartfelt words. Xiong Xiaofeng was 8 years old this year, but he had never taken a step out of this mountain. When Poplar Fruit told his father about going to Qicheng, his heart had already drifted to the big city that he had never seen before. She heard that there were big buses there, and that the buildings there were taller than the mountains. She also heard that the brothers and sisters there had beautiful clothes to wear. Don't interrupt. Xiongjiwu glared at his youngest son who had a bad temper. However, Poplar Fruit stopped him and said with a smile, "Little Feng, of course you're going too. Otherwise, if you're the only one at home, who will cook for you?" Then Poplar Fruit said to Xiongjiwu with a smile, "Brother Xiong, don't worry. Take them with you. I'll pay for all the expenses." Poplar Fruit, the expenses are too high. Xiongjiwu shook his head and said, "2 more children means 2 more mouths to feed." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "It's okay. It won't cost much." "By the way, you don't know what I do you?" Poplar Fruit suddenly asked. Kiki knows. Kiki, who had been unable to get a word in, jumped up happily and said, "Papa is a teacher." "I'm not a teacher yet." Poplar Fruit smiled modestly and said, "I'm now a graduate student and also an interpreter." What was a graduate student? What was a translator? Xiongjiwu nodded confusedly, but he and the 2 children didn't understand at all. Poplar Fruit knew as soon as he saw their expressions, so he had to briefly introduce them to Xiongjiwu and the others. Oh, a college student in a university. Although 1 grade higher, he was still a college student. Xiongjiwu and the others looked at Poplar Fruit with awe. The old teacher who used to teach in the stronghold was only a high school graduate, but he was already respected by everyone. A college student was even more amazing. Actually, it's not as high as you think. If Xiaolin studies hard, she can also be admitted to a university in the future. Poplar Fruit smiled and encouraged Xiong Xiaolin. "I'm going to Cheng City this time mainly to have a meeting with my teacher." Poplar Fruit said simply, "Xiaolin will accompany us and stay with us in the school's guest house. If there are no rooms, I'll book a hotel. I mainly want Xiaolin to help me take care of Kiki." If it were some other small activities, it would be fine for Poplar Fruit to bring Kiki to play. But this time, they were going to attend a seminar. The guests present were either highly respected or knowledgeable. In any case, they were all seniors in the translation field. It would be rude for Poplar Fruit to bring his daughter along. Poplar Fruit had a headache about this problem. His initial plan was to entrust Kiki to the other teachers from the school. But they might not be free, and Kiki didn't like to stay with strangers. Although Kiki was a little more sensible now and didn't insist that her father stay by her side, if she couldn't see her father and didn't have acquaintances like Bebe or Uncle Mosquito by her side, her temper would explode. Seeing that Kiki was getting along well with the mature and steady Xiong Xiaolin, Poplar Fruit had an idea. That was why he wanted to bring Xiong Xiaolin to Cheng City. "Sorry, my idea may be a little selfish." Poplar Fruit smiled apologetically and said, "But I think this is a good opportunity for you, Xiaolin. You can see the study and life of a university student. I think that after you experience it, you will have a clearer understanding of your own life." "Brother Yang, what do you mean?" Xiongjiwu rubbed his hands and said embarrassedly, "You have helped our family so much. Xiaolin should help take care of the child. This is what she should do." Xiong Xiaolin nodded vigorously. After listening to what Poplar Fruit said, her eyes shone with desire. Xiong Xiaofeng, who didn't have much of a presence, squeezed in front of his sister, and said with his chest out, "Uncle Poplar Fruit, there's still me. I can also help you take care of Sister Kiki." "Who needs you to take care of her?" Kiki rejected him crisply. "Uncle Mosquito said that girls should keep a distance from boys." As soon as these words came out, there was an awkward silence. Poplar Fruit's forehead dripped with cold sweat. He gritted his teeth at Song Jiwen, who was hiding in Yangcheng. He wanted nothing more than to grab him and beat him up. This bastard. He had led his daughter astray again. But then again, why did Kiki's arrogant tone sound so much like little Chili Chen Anlin? TSK, these two guys aren't good people. Chapter 509. The mountain road was long, and it would take a long time to walk. Poplar Fruit and the others didn't dare to delay for too long, so they quickly packed their luggage and set off. In addition to carrying Kiki in his left hand, Poplar Fruit also took care of all the luggage for the two families. Xiong Xiaofeng was too young, so he could only follow his sister empty-handed. Xiong Xiaolin carried a small basket, but under the care of Poplar Fruit, there wasn't much stuff in it. Yi Nuzhang couldn't walk too far on the mountain road because of her weak body, so Xiong Jiwu asked his relatives in the stockade to help carry Yi Nuzhang out on a stretcher. Needless to say, the process was difficult. The rugged mountain road, and the danger of the suspension bridge, seriously restricted Poplar Fruit and the others' footsteps. They set off at 9 o'clock in the morning, and walked until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when Poplar Fruit and the others arrived at the place where Poplar Fruit had crashed. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had already expected this situation. Before he set off, he called the insurance company and asked them to help arrange a van to pick them up. The treatment of a big client was really different. Poplar Fruit's request was actually readily accepted by the insurance company. Of course, the fare was still paid by Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jiwu moved all the luggage out of the cave and into the van. Then they all sat in the van. Naturally, the van couldn't be compared with Poplar Fruit's Land Rover. Including the driver, there were a total of 4 adults and 3 children in the van. Plus the luggage in the back, it suddenly became a little crowded. Moreover, the van was very bumpy on the mountain road. Poplar Fruit was a little worried that Yi Nuzhang couldn't stand it. Xiong Jiwu was very satisfied with such treatment. He used to walk the mountain road for a whole day on foot to go home, or go out of the mountain. He didn't have the enjoyment of sitting in a van. However, for Poplar Fruit and Kiki, the van wasn't an enjoyment. In the small, airtight space he hugged Kiki and squeezed with Xiong Xiaolin and Xiong Xiaofeng. The strange smell of leather in the car became even worse. After sitting in the van for an hour, Poplar Fruit and the others arrived at the county. Poplar Fruit immediately made the decision to switch cars. After dinner, they switched to the bus that would go straight to Zhongqing. Although it wasn't much better, at least it was more spacious and comfortable. The bus ride to Chong City took 8 hours because the first part of the road wasn't fast. They took a nap. When they reached Great City, the sky was still shrouded in darkness. The Xiong family members, who were used to waking up early, wiped their faces and jumped out of the car energetically. However, it wasn't even 5 in the morning, and the city was still asleep. Walking out of the station, the street lamps were shrouded in fog. The dim light of the street lamps did not extend too far on the quiet street. The shops along the street were closed, and even the breakfast shops were locked. Other than the same batch of passengers who had just alighted, there were a few scattered taxis on the other side of the street. Poplar Fruit couldn't see any signs of human habitation. However, all this didn't stop Xiong Xiaofeng from sighing. What a big road! Xiong Xiaofeng was so excited that he couldn't fall asleep that night. When they arrived at Great City, although his eyelids were fighting, he forced himself to stay awake. He ran and skipped to the front, looking up and down at the city that was as huge as a prehistoric beast. His sister, Xiong Xiaolin, had never been to a big city before, but she didn't run around making a fuss. Instead, she was very sensible and helped her father support her mother. Although her thin shoulders couldn't support the entire Xiong family, her maturity and understanding touched Poplar Fruit. As they had arrived too early, it wasn't convenient for Poplar Fruit to ask the teacher to wake up from her sleep to fetch him. He carried Kiki, who was still sleeping on his chest, to the street and called for 2 taxis. Although it was still too early, Poplar Fruit, Kiki and the 2 children sat in one car, while Xiong Jiwu and Yi Nuzhang sat in the other car, following behind. The bus station was still very far from the university town where the meeting was held. Although there were no obstructions along the way, the taxi still took almost an hour to reach the university town. Xiong Xiaofeng couldn't hold on in the car anymore. He staggered and finally fell asleep on his sister's lap. It was a pity that he missed the most beautiful scenery in the city. Poplar Fruit's taxi passed through half of the city, and the sky gradually brightened from the misty darkness. The largest city in the southwest region was like a cloud leopard that had been sleeping for a long time, slowly opening its eyes. The tall buildings that were previously hidden in the fog revealed themselves. Poplar Fruit glanced at Xiong Xiaolin, who was staring blankly out of the car window. He smiled slightly and said in a low voice, "The world is very big, but people's dreams are even bigger." Xiong Xiaolin turned her head and looked into Poplar Fruit's eyes. She nodded thoughtfully. Once people got older, they wouldn't be able to sleep well, especially when they still had some worries in their hearts. Poplar Fruit didn't dare to call Chen Zongdai. Chen Zongdai, who had woken up early, couldn't help but call him. "Poplar Fruit, have you arrived yet? What took you so long?" "I'm here," Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said. "I thought you were still resting, so I didn't dare to disturb you." "Where are you now?" "I'll get someone to pick you up," Chen Zongdai said, overjoyed at the unexpected good news. "I'm at the entrance of Chongqing University's campus," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. The old man walked out of the guest house excitedly and found Poplar Fruit at the bus stop in front of the school gate. When he saw Poplar Fruit, Chen Zongdai almost couldn't recognize Poplar Fruit. After a day of mountain roads and driving, Poplar Fruit's hair was messy, and his clothes were dirty. Moreover, he sat on a bench at the bus stop with the 4 members of the Xiong family. Bags of various sizes were placed around him, and he looked like a migrant worker who had just entered the city. "How did you end up like this? Where are your clothes?" Chen Zongdai walked over and complained. Poplar Fruit knew what the teacher was referring to. He said with a smile, "It was an emergency, so I didn't have time to change. It's okay, the formal clothes are in the box and I can change them later." After introducing the Xiong family to the teacher, Xiong Jiwu and the others behaved more respectfully in front of Chen Zongdai, an old professor. They kept bowing to Chen Zongdai, which made Chen Zongdai a little embarrassed. "I heard Poplar Fruit talk about your situation." Chen Zongdai looked at Xiong Jiwu kindly and said, "Don't worry too much, the hospital has been arranged. The major third affiliated hospital is in the university town. Put down your things later, and I'll get someone to take you there. After the examination, the treatment will be arranged immediately." Xiong Jiwu thanked him repeatedly with red eyes. From yesterday to now, Xiong Jiwu felt like he was in a dream. He never thought that he would meet so many kind people. This made him feel even more guilty about the wrong things he had done in a moment of confusion. "It must be the blessing of my ancestors," Xiong Jiwu said in his heart. "Jiwu will repay the kindness of my benefactors in the future, even if I have to be an ox or a horse." Chapter 510. When they checked into the guest house of Chongqing University, there was a small setback. Perhaps it was because she saw that the 4 members of the Xiong family were in ragged clothes, but the girl at the front desk insisted that the rooms in the guest house had been arranged for the professors who came to the meeting. Even Poplar Fruit, who had not yet obtained the participation certificate, was not able to get the key to his room. Xiong Jiwu knew that he was not very popular with the people in the city, so he quietly pulled Poplar Fruit's clothes from behind and said in a low voice, "Poplar Fruit, it's okay. Xiao Yi is in the hospital, so I can find a place to stay. The weather is not cold." Before Poplar Fruit could speak, Chen Zongdai lost his temper and said angrily, "Who said that there are no rooms? There are 5 or 6 empty rooms on the floor where I live. Why can't they be given to us?" Chen Zongdai's every movement had a kind of magnanimity, and after he got angry, his momentum soared, making the girl at the front desk keep quiet. "Isn't it just a few rooms for you? Do you have to reject me so much?" Chen Zongdai slammed the table and said, "Did the country train you to look down on farmers? But there are rules." The girl at the front desk hid behind the table and said weakly, "And you have a dog. So what if it's a dog? Can't a dog stay in the guest house? Rules are made by people. Why are you guys so stubborn?" Chen Zongdai said resentfully, Forget it. I'll go up and call your leader over." Originally, Chen Zongdai did not want to give the impression that he was bullying others, but he could not reason with them. He was impatient to waste time with them. President Chen, President Chen. Suddenly, there were a few hurried calls in the lobby. Everyone turned around and saw a middle-aged fat man in a work suit running out of the inner room in a hurry. When he saw the person, Chen Zongdai's face relaxed a little. He stopped and responded faintly, "Manager Song." The quarrel in the lobby not only woke up Kiki in a daze, but it also woke up the lazy manager who was sleeping in the inner room. Manager Song touched his hair that he hadn't had time to fiddle with and said with an apologetic smile, "President Chen, I'm really sorry. Xiao Lu doesn't know any better and offended you. Don't worry, if you have any requests, I'll arrange it for you immediately." The receptionist named Xiao Lu stood at the back with her head lowered in fear. She also knew that she had made a mistake. Xiao Lu was on the night shift this week. She didn't know, but Manager Song knew. This ordinary-looking old man in a thin undershirt was the dean of a university. If it was only the dean, it would be fine because there were also many leaders of second-rate colleges and even technical schools who wore the skin of a dean. However, when Chen Zongdai arrived at Chongqing University, the vice-chancellor of Chongqing University personally welcomed him and escorted him to his room. Manager Song, who had witnessed all this, understood that Chen Zongdai's background was definitely not small. If he offended him, not to mention the culprit, Xiao Lu, he might not be able to keep his position as the manager on duty. Chen Zongdai sized up Manager Song and slowly said, "The problem isn't too big, but it's not too small either. However, as a manager, you have to strengthen the ideological education of your employees in the future. How can you judge a book by its cover?" Yes. You're right. Manager Song nodded and said. Now, no matter who was right or wrong, it was definitely not wrong for him to sincerely admit his mistake first. Chen Zongdai's anger subsided a lot. He nodded and said, "I have a few friends here and their family happens to be staying in Chongqing for a few days. Take a look and help arrange an empty double room. Don't worry about the cost, we'll pay according to the price." "How can I let you pay for it?" Manager Song laughed and said, "It's during the meeting now, so the guest rooms are not open to the public. There are a lot of empty rooms. I'll get Xiao Lu to arrange it for you immediately. You can stay as long as you want. We'll pay for it." Poplar Fruit didn't want to be greedy for such a small advantage. He said seriously, "After all, they're not teachers here for the meeting. It's not good for them to stay in the guest house for free." When Poplar Fruit said it was not good for them, he was referring to Higashiyama University, which he and Chen Zongdai represented. On the other hand, he himself was quite resistant to such a thing. Chen Zongdai, on the other hand, gave him a look of appreciation. A scholar should have the spirit of not bending over for 5 buckets of rice. This. Manager Song looked at Chen Zongdai awkwardly. Chen Zongdai waved his hand and said, "It's arranged like this. It's okay. Hurry up, I have to meet with your President Ma later." Manager Song had no choice but to ask Xiao Lu at the front desk to find the room key for Xiong Jiwu and the others. He wanted to make up for it. While hesitating, he took the opportunity to say to Chen Zongdai, "President Chen, your friend's family of 6 only wants a double room. It's so crowded. Why don't I arrange another room for you? Anyway, the empty guest rooms are just empty rooms." A family of 6? Chen Zongdai counted in confusion. Then he saw Poplar Fruit's appearance. He laughed and said, "No, this is my disciple. He and his daughter are included in the participants. By the way, ask Xiao Lu to help find which room Poplar Fruit is staying in at Higashiyama University. Give him the key." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "There was a misunderstanding just now. Do you need us to go up and get the participation card for you to register?" Manager Song was also an official in the guest house. Naturally, he had trained a pair of keen eyes. Poplar Fruit's clothes were not good enough, and his hair and skin were a little dirty. But when he spoke, his temperament was reflected. He was a living copy of Chen Zongdai. In literary terms, they came from the same origin. Manager Song did not dare to be negligent. He laughed and said, No, President Chen has already spoken. Do you think he would lie to me? Xiao Lu, did you hear that? Hurry up and help. Help Brother Yang find his room key." Poplar Fruit, Mui Yang, the fruit of apple. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. In order to make up for the impression in Chen Zongdai's heart, Manager Song personally carried the 2 bags of luggage of the Xiong family and walked forward. Xiao Lu also lowered his head and carried the bag in fear and trepidation, following behind. Xiong Jiwu had never seen such treatment. He supported his wife on his back with one hand and wanted to snatch the bag with Manager Song with the other. No. Maybe Xiong Jiwu's accent was too heavy, but Manager Song actually judged that he was a meow. He immediately changed to meow and said with a smile, "Brother, it's okay. Leave it to us. Please forgive us for the neglect before." Manager Song was also a meow. The world was too small. Xiong Jiwu could not compete with him. He could only squeeze out a smile and said, Thank you. Poplar Fruit did not care about the little episode between them. He was now holding Kiki in his arms and quickly distancing himself from Chen Zongdai. Grandpa Beard. Kiki did not sleep well yesterday. She had just woken up for a long time before she regained her consciousness. When she recognized Chen Zongdai's appearance, Kiki became excited. She still remembered that Grandpa Beard's beard was soft and comfortable to touch. It was even more comfortable to pull out. When Chen Zongdai saw Kiki, who was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, his eyes widened. He was so scared that he jumped to the side to protect his beard. Kiki was like a big lion that had just woken up. It was too scary. Chapter 511. After sending them to their room and putting down their luggage, Manager Song and the others tactfully left. The hostel in the university was actually similar to an ordinary motel. There were 2 big beds, a TV in front, a big table, and a balcony outside the floor-to-ceiling window. When the curtains were pulled open, the bright morning sun filled the room. However, such a simple and crude room was already very luxurious for the Xiong family. Including Xiong Jiwu, they looked around eagerly and carefully. They didn't dare to get close to the bed when they were half a meter away, for fear that the dirt on their bodies would dirty the white sheets. On the contrary, Xiong Xiaofeng was slightly more active. After entering the room, he went straight to the most conspicuous TV in the room and shouted excitedly, "TV, TV!" There were also 1 or 2 families in the stockade who had a TV, but only a few received it. Xiong Xiaofeng felt that the happiest thing was to go to his friend's house to watch cartoons after dinner. However, Xiong Xiaolin grabbed his hand and frowned. "Xiaofeng, don't move. You'll break it." Poplar Fruit felt that Xiong Xiaofeng was much better than Xiong Xiaolin in this regard. Xiong Xiaolin was so sensible that she was like an adult. Children who didn't have any naivety and liveliness would be very tired. Poplar Fruit walked over with a smile and helped Xiong Xiaofeng turn on the TV. Then he handed the remote control to him and said, "It doesn't matter. It's just watching TV. It won't break." Chen Zongdai said, "Xiaoxiong, hurry up and tidy up. There's hot water in the bathroom. Take a bath. After a while, we'll take Xiaoyi to the hospital for an examination." Poplar Fruit nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, you don't have to be so reserved. Use the things in the room if you want to. I also have to go back and tidy up. If you need anything, just find me next door." Just now Manager Song was very helpful. He asked Xiao Lu to arrange a double room for them on the same floor as Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jiwu's rooms were only 2 rooms apart. Thank you. Thank you so much." Xiong Jiwu found it difficult to express his inner gratitude. He spoke incoherently. After sending off Chen Zongdai, Poplar Fruit returned to his room and put down his luggage. Kiki and Gold rolled on the carpet and then struggled to get up. She looked at her father pitifully and said, "Papa, Kiki wants to take a bath." Kiki even stretched out her little arms and said, "Smell it, it stinks." Poplar Fruit knelt down on one knee, smiled and pretended to sniff, and said, "How is it smelly? Our Kiki is Princess Xiang Xiang. Even if she doesn't take a bath for 100 days, she will still smell good." Sigh. Kiki wrapped her arms around her father's neck and stomped her feet. She acted coquettishly and said, "No, Kiki wants to take a bath." Poplar Fruit was just joking. How could he let Kiki not take a bath for 100 days? He liked his daughter acting coquettishly in front of him the most. Poplar Fruit hugged Kiki with satisfaction, kissed her pink face and said, "Well, as you wish, Papa will give you a bath." There was no bathtub in the guest house, so they could only use the shower head. However, the water from the shower head was too strong. Poplar Fruit felt a little stinging when he felt it, let alone Kiki's delicate skin. However, Poplar Fruit still came up with a good idea. He took out a towel and hugged the shower head. Haha. Kiki stuck out her little, but to let her father apply the shower gel. When she saw Gold poking his head in from the unlocked bathroom door, she immediately screamed. Poplar Fruit didn't know if this little girl was screaming or laughing. Anyway, she was right next to his ear. The high decibel screams made Poplar Fruit's eardrums tingle, making him feel very uncomfortable. Kiki not only screamed happily, but also kicked and punched the water on the floor. Gold was drenched in water and slipped out. However, Poplar Fruit was not spared. His clothes were wet from the splashing water. "Little rascal, don't move." Poplar Fruit gently patted Kiki's little butt. "Otherwise I'll spank you." Kiki was a little more well-behaved. After washing up, Poplar Fruit wrapped the naked Kiki in a bath towel and carried her to the bed outside. Chi-Chi twisted her body and crawled out of the bath towel. Her dried hair was scattered in front of her body, her delicate shoulders, and her fair and tender skin. Although she was petite and cute, she also had a bit of the allure of a beauty coming out of the bath. Poplar Fruit pulled the quilt and covered Kiki with it. He smiled and said, "Daddy will take a bath first, then I'll help you put on your clothes. Don't move around, do you hear me?" Kiki blinked her eyes, her long eyelashes fluttering. She suddenly stuck out her little chest and cutely said, "Yes, sir." "You have to say yes, Daddy." Poplar Fruit smiled and corrected her. "Yes, Daddy," Kiki delicately said with a long voice. Poplar Fruit laughed, took his change of clothes and went to the bathroom. Before going in, he kicked Gold, who was thinking about jumping on the big bed, into the bathroom. Poplar Fruit had just finished his bath and walked out of the bathroom while drying his hair when he heard a knock on the door. He suspiciously opened the door and looked out. "Teacher?" The person standing outside the door was indeed Chunzongdai. "Why did you take so long?" Chunzongdai strangely asked. "I was bathing Kiki." The little rascal made a fuss for a while. Poplar Fruit apologetically walked to the corridor and then closed the door. "I haven't dressed her yet." "Teacher, are we going to leave now?" "How can it be so early? It's only 8 o'clock. Chunzongdai smiled and said, "I know you guys are busy cleaning up, so I brought breakfast for you guys. Is there porridge?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. He smelled the sour and spicy aroma. "Yes, I know Kiki only eats porridge, so I brought her a separate portion." Chunzongdai smiled and said, "This is Chong City's famous hot and sour noodles. Try it." "That's great." Poplar Fruit was overjoyed and said, "I've long wanted to eat a bowl of authentic hot and sour noodles from Chong City. I can't say whether it's authentic or not, but Manager Song from the guest house brought it back from the school's staff canteen." Chunzongdai smiled and said, "You don't have to worry about Xiao Xiong's family. Manager Song has already sent it over." "Oh right." Chunzongdai remembered his main purpose. He held a magazine in his left hand and handed it over. He smiled and said, "Your thesis is published on page 37. Take a look when you have time." "It's really published?" Poplar Fruit saw Chunzongdai turn the page and saw the title of his thesis at first glance. He was overjoyed. Although he had heard about it from his teacher, Poplar Fruit felt that it was unreal before he saw it in person. This was a completely different concept from seeing one's translated work published. Poplar Fruit never dreamed that his dream of being able to publish his thoughts in an authoritative academic journal in the country would come true before he even entered the school. Chapter 512. Poplar Fruit, who could not suppress his excitement, walked into the room. He did not help Kiki put on her clothes. Instead, he held the magazine and flipped to his page to read. In fact, there was nothing to read. Poplar Fruit could have memorized the entire article upside down, but he still read it once. What he wanted was the spontaneous sense of accomplishment. As he read, Poplar Fruit felt a slippery little person sneak into his arms. He looked down and found that the naked Kiki had unknowingly climbed out of the quilt. Kiki saw that her father did not respond to her. She was very puzzled. What was more attractive than Kiki? You'll catch a cold if you don't put on clothes. Poplar Fruit did not know that he was the one to blame the most. He smiled and patted Kiki's head. He stood up and took out a set of clean clothes for Kiki to change into. Considering the time, Poplar Fruit did not call. Instead, he sent a text message to Fong Beibei to let her know that he was safe. Fong Beibei quickly replied, "I'm in class. It's good that you're here. Talk to you in the evening." Poplar Fruit's thoughts were very imaginative. After having breakfast with Kiki, he ran to Chun Zongdai's room to drop in. "Professor, I have something to ask you." "What is it?" Chun Zongdai was sitting on a chair in the room, reading a book. He looked up at Poplar Fruit and gently took off the reading glasses on the bridge of his nose. "Is it because your editor's note is too plain?" "That's because your paper was recommended by me. However, it is a new theory that has not been rigorously verified. No editor would dare to give you a high evaluation if it was in their hands." Chun Zongdai said solemnly, "Therefore, the challenge you will face will be great. Not everyone can accept such radical thinking." Poplar Fruit was stunned. He did not consider this problem. The editor's note did not have any guidance for Poplar Fruit. Would his own article and his own ideas be changed by other people's opinions? Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Professor, this is not what I want to talk to you about." "Then what is it?" Chun Zongdai was also stunned. He did not know that his apprentice was so thick-skinned. The meeting was tomorrow, and Poplar Fruit had to go on stage to give a report. Chun Zongdai had arranged it. Otherwise, it would not be his turn. He was not worried at all. "I want to ask, doesn't our school have a graduate student teaching group?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Chun Zongdai did not know why Poplar Fruit asked this question. He gently nodded. Poplar Fruit continued, "I heard that our students went to the remote west to teach. Is it possible that they came to Guishan province to teach? There are many primary schools in Guishan province that do not have teachers." This question had been hovering in Poplar Fruit's mind ever since Xiong Xiaolin told him the story of the old teacher. It was difficult for children in the mountains to go to school. However, when they overcame many difficulties and longed to be able to study, the school became an empty room. Poplar Fruit had thought of asking the local government for help. However, he remembered that the old teacher was a model worker. He had been running around for many years. Poplar Fruit believed that he could only sigh and go back. Therefore, he turned his hope to the school's graduate student teaching group. Of course, Poplar Fruit could also participate in teaching. However, it was impossible for him to solve this problem by himself. Poplar Fruit also had his own life. It was impossible for him to stay in the mountains for a long time. The possibility is not high. Chun Zongdai understood the meaning of his apprentice's question. He shook his head and said, "The location of the teaching group is relatively fixed. It is in the difficult western areas like Tibet and Qinghai. It is unlikely that they will go to the Hmong village that you mentioned." "I know, they are responding to the call of the country." Poplar Fruit did not give up and said, "But didn't you say before? The rules are set by people. There are also many children in Guishan who need help." Poplar Fruit, this is not a problem of the Hmong village. It is not a problem that you can solve alone. Chun Zongdai sighed and said, "The unequal distribution of educational resources is a big problem that the country is facing. In recent years, fewer and fewer students from the countryside pass the entrance examination. Most of them are students from the city. It was also published in the newspaper. However, the war of words has been going on for several years, and it still can't be solved." "Then we can't sit back and do nothing." Poplar Fruit frowned and said, "Everyone should pay more attention to it and think about countermeasures. Maybe it can really be solved?" Chun Zongdai smiled and said, "It is useless to be anxious with me now. The country called for support in Tibet decades ago, let alone in recent years. However, Tibet is still the same. The conditions there are much more difficult than Guishan. No one went with the support of the policy. Without the support of the policy, it was even more difficult. This was the current situation of the children in the mountains. Poplar Fruit felt a little helpless when he thought of this. He sighed and said, "But it can't go on like this. Learning is their only way out. Without knowledge and skills, they can only follow the old path of their parents. Is this vicious cycle going to continue?" Chen Zongdai shook his head slightly and said, "The country will not let it go like this. Wait patiently." Poplar Fruit did not think so. Now the government used GDP as the only standard for political performance assessment. From top to bottom, every official put their attention on economic development, which was the most likely to be successful. Who would pay attention to the future of this small group of people? At the age of 15, it was almost the age of high school in the city. But Xiong Xiaolin had just graduated from primary school. At the same time, there were more children behind her who could not go to school. How could they compete with the children in the city? If they let it go, the future of Xiong Xiaolin and the other children in the mountains would be destroyed day by day. However, Poplar Fruit also saw the reality. Life in the mountains was so difficult that no teacher would give up the comfortable life in the city to teach the children. As for teaching, even Poplar Fruit was reluctant to spend the most precious years of his life here. If he put himself in the shoes of others, the outcome was not difficult to imagine. Although he was still flustered, Poplar Fruit did not discuss this issue with Chen Zongdai again. He talked to Chen Zongdai about tonight's banquet and tomorrow's meeting, and then he left. Poplar Fruit took Kiki with his little tail. He did not go directly to the room. He went to the double room where the 4 members of the Xiong family lived. "Hello, Uncle Poplar Fruit." The one who opened the door was very sensible Xiong Xiaolin. Xiong Jiwu had just taken care of his wife and 2 children, and it was his turn to take a bath. When Poplar Fruit saw the English textbook in Xiong Xiaolin's hand, he smiled at her bitterly. Xiong Xiaolin did not change the channel to watch TV with her brother. Instead, she obediently reviewed the phonetic symbols that Poplar Fruit taught her in the morning. It was not difficult for Poplar Fruit to imagine her thoughts, because this was also what Poplar Fruit looked forward to when he was in the Miao Stockade village. Seeing the big world outside, Xiong Xiaolin was more eager to find a way to enter the big city through reading. There were many children like her, but they had already lost at the starting line. They needed to put in more effort to chase after them, which was unimaginable to ordinary people. This was not fair. Chapter 513. Vice Principal Ma of Chongqing University only arrived at 10 a.m. with Shanshan. He was accompanied by 6 well-dressed people, and looked like a big shot. However, if he was just visiting an old friend, his attitude was a little too much. When Poplar Fruit was in the foreign trade business, he was humble when he met people like this. His every move was careful, and he was afraid that he would say something wrong. However, now that he had become more powerful, Poplar Fruit's attitude had changed. However, even though his attitude had changed, Poplar Fruit did not show any disgust. He maintained an attitude that was neither servile nor overbearing as he followed behind his teacher with a dignified manner. Chen Zongdai, on the other hand, was used to it. He greeted him with a smile, and chatted enthusiastically with Vice Principal Ma. "Come, Poplar Fruit, let me introduce you. This is Vice Principal Ma of Chongqing University." After the greetings, Chen Zongdai pulled Poplar Fruit over and smiled. "Old Ma, this is my new student. He will be studying under me this year." "Nice to meet you, Vice Principal Ma," Poplar Fruit said loudly. "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you," Vice Principal Ma replied in surprise. He knew his old classmate's personality. He was knowledgeable and proud at the same time. He was known for his high standards and strictness in his studies. Vice Principal Ma had never seen him try so hard to introduce a junior to him. No, Chen Zongdai was talking about a graduate student. Since when did it become his turn to teach a graduate student? He could barely teach a few doctoral students in a year. Vice Principal Ma looked at Poplar Fruit differently. He muttered in his heart. Could it be that he's from some family? His background is strong enough. "Your Poplar Fruit?" Vice Principal Ma did not have much of a reaction when he heard this name. However, the 2 people behind him shouted in unison. Vice Principal Ma turned his head and asked curiously, "Adin Qian Din Luo, you know Little Yang too?" Vice Principal Ma's major was not in the field of linguistics and translation. Moreover, he focused on administrative affairs and had not read academic journals for many years. Hee, I've long heard of it, long heard of it. Dean Qian, who was slightly older, chuckled. He didn't say much. Dean Luo, who was slightly younger, had a more violent temper. He sneered and said, "How could I not know him? From this month onwards, I'm afraid the name Poplar Fruit will be famous all over the country, right?" If this sentence was said in a different tone, it would be a compliment. However, Dean Luo's tone was obviously strange, making people feel uncomfortable when they heard it. Poplar Fruit frowned slightly. He looked at Director Luo and saw disdain in his eyes. It was as if he was a clown in Director Luo's eyes. Before Vice Principal Ma could speak, Dean Qian was also shocked by Director Luo's words. He quickly pulled Director Luo from behind and tried to smooth things over with a smile. Poplar Fruit is Director Chen's disciple. It's natural for him to be famous. Ha ha ha. After saying that, he secretly glared at Director Luo. He was very dissatisfied with Director Luo's recklessness. No matter how uncomfortable he felt, he could vent it in private. However, he could not mess around in front of Vice Principal Ma. If the situation became too tense, where would Vice Principal Ma's face go? Vice Principal Ma looked at Poplar Fruit thoughtfully. He smiled and changed the topic with Chen Zongdai. Poplar Fruit followed behind them and sat down. Actually, he did not want to pretend to be polite with Vice Principal Ma. His heart had already flown to Kiki's side. Kiki was now under Xiong Xiaolin's care. My daughter and I were watching TV in the room. Originally, Poplar Fruit's computer was broken and did not have time to buy a new one. However, unexpectedly, the children's channel was also broadcasting Pleasant Goat. Hence, Kiki was still sitting there calmly. However, even if he did not want to, Poplar Fruit still had to put on an act. After all, this was Shicheng. They were in other people's territory. Moreover, they had to trouble them to arrange for Yi Nuzhang's hospitalization. Poplar Fruit had to put in some effort. Because there were outsiders around, Vice Principal Ma and Chen Zongdai did not talk about their personal relationship. Instead, they talked about the seminar. After listening for a while, Poplar Fruit realized that such a small seminar was actually so important to Shicheng University. Chongqing University wasn't very well known. It was rare for them to be able to hold a national high-level seminar. In order to hold this seminar well and let the professors and scholars from Beijing, Sorcery City, and other big cities see the glory of Chongqing University, the teachers and students had worked together and prepared for more than a month. I still have to go and pick up Vice Principal Zhu from Beijing University later. Vice Principal Ma lowered his voice and said with a hint of complaint. Picking up Vice Principal Zhu from the airport and visiting his old classmate were two different things. Vice Principal Zhu from Beijing University was much more valuable than a vice principal from a university that ranked lower than him. Therefore, Vice Principal Ma naturally did not dare to neglect Vice Principal Zhu's arrival. That means that your preparation this time was very successful. Chen Zongdai smiled and comforted Vice Principal Ma. Even old Zhu is here. I didn't expect him to come. He rarely attended seminars in the past. If you are busy, you don't have to accompany me. Hurry up and do your work. Chen Zongdai smiled and said, I also have a patient here. I have to send him to the hospital for a checkup later. You told me yesterday. I didn't forget. Vice Principal Ma smiled and pointed at Chen Zongdai. Don't worry. I will definitely make arrangements for you before I go. He took out a piece of paper from his suit jacket pocket. There was a number written on it. He said, This is Dr. Liao from the 3rd Affiliated Hospital. I told him this morning to give him a call before you go. He will make the necessary arrangements for you. After Vice Principal Ma left, the group of people following him also left. When they left, only Director Luo gave Poplar Fruit a strange look. This made Poplar Fruit feel a little strange. What did I do to offend you? Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart. Chen Zongdai saw the way he looked at Director Luo's back. He waited until there was no one else, then laughed softly and said, Don't worry about that guy with the surname Luo. Although he is the vice principal of the School of Foreign Languages of Chong City University, he is not very good. I guess he was upset when he saw that you published an article on translator genius at such a young age. Poplar Fruit shook his head slightly. He did not take this matter to heart. He actually wanted to ask Chong City University about the issue of volunteer teaching. However, looking at the situation, he guessed that he would get a more bureaucratic answer. There were still a few days before the seminar. Poplar Fruit was not in a hurry. His top priority today was to send Yi Nuzhang to the hospital for treatment. This illness could not be delayed any longer. Fortunately, the teacher had already made arrangements for Poplar Fruit. Chapter 514. Yi Nuzhang was admitted to the third affiliated hospital of Chongqing University very smoothly, but Poplar Fruit and the others were still stopped by the upright old doctor at the door and scolded. Do you know that if you sent her here 3 days later, you wouldn't have to send her here? You can just wait at home to collect her corpse. Do you know what it means to save a life like putting out a fire? The old doctor's mouth was very vicious. He completely ignored Dr. Liao, who was looking at him with a bitter face, and scolded him. You didn't perform the operation immediately after the diagnosis was made in the hospital, and the minor illness was delayed until it became a serious illness. If you delayed any longer, she would be gone. Is there any family member like you, leaving your wife at home to suffer? Although Poplar Fruit's clothes weren't from a famous brand, they were still good goods that cost at least 600 yuan. Looking at the material and style, one could tell that the price was not cheap. As a result, he made the old doctor mistakenly think that the Xiong family was very rich, but they didn't care about women's illnesses. Sigh. After Poplar Fruit walked out, he still sighed with lingering fear. Wasn't he just here to send someone for treatment? He was even scolded in the face. Chen Zongdai was really lucky. He had something to do and didn't accompany him to the hospital. Otherwise, the two grumpy old men would have quarreled. Papa, that grandpa Bai is so fierce. Kiki also pulled her father's clothes and said in fear. The old doctor's surname was not Bai. The Bai that Kiki said referred to his white coat. But fortunately, Yi Nuzhang's illness hadn't caused a big disaster yet. After the hospital checked, they immediately arranged the operation. The speed of the surgery was so fast that it took only an hour for the not-so-small surgery to be completed. The operation effect of Yi Nuzhang's operation was very good. Although she had just been anesthetized and hadn't completely left, the benign tumor in her abdominal cavity had been taken out. The old doctor was very satisfied. He was worried that the tumor would mutate. At that time, there would be no way to save her. Yi Nuzhang didn't have any big problems, but she still had to stay in the hospital for a few days. So Xiong Jiwu stayed in the hospital to accompany her, and Poplar Fruit left with the children. Poplar Fruit suddenly became the leader of the children. He walked in the middle with Kiki in his arms. Xiong Xiaofeng, who looked like a bird that escaped from a cage, was walking in front of him, and Xiong Xiaolin behind. The three children's personalities were very different. Chi-Chi liked to chatter away with her father. She was like 100,000 wise. As long as she saw something that she was interested in, her questions would come flooding in like a tsunami. Xiong Xiaolin's, Xiong Xiaolin Xiong, and Xiong Xiaolin's family. After he went to the hospital, he didn't. He only in the morning for a while, Xiong. He had only had in the morning for a while. He for the hospital, he's. It was as if the whole world was new to him. The bus stop, the green trees standing neatly by the roadside, and the young students passing by on bicycles, all attracted Xiong Xiaofeng's attention. He couldn't wait to touch everything he saw. For this, Poplar Fruit had to stop him. Otherwise, this guy would not only touch but also put his head into the roadside trash can. In comparison, Xiong Xiaolin was much more shy. She always had a sense of inferiority in her heart. She followed behind Poplar Fruit shyly. Sometimes, she didn't pay attention when Poplar Fruit talked to her, because he didn't want to leave her out. Xiong Xiaolin had been trying to reduce her presence, but Poplar Fruit didn't want her to do that. Let's go buy new clothes. Xiaolin Xiaofeng, you should wear new clothes. Don't always wear meow clothes. Poplar Fruit suggested with a smile. Kiki, what do you think? Oh, okay. Kiki wriggled in front of her father's chest happily. She cried. Kiki wants to buy a new dress too. Kiki wants to buy a new dress. Xiong Xiaofeng didn't answer. His eager expression had already told Poplar Fruit the answer. Xiong Xiaolin hesitated and said, Uncle, I'm sorry to ask you to spend money again. It's just a few clothes. Your uncle Poplar Fruit can still afford it. Poplar Fruit smiled and pulled the two little guys into the taxi. Under the taxi driver's kind reminder, Poplar Fruit didn't go to the shopping mall in the university town as planned. There were no children's clothes for sale there. They left the university town and went to the nearest department store. Xiong Xiaofeng was dazzled by the dazzling lineup of goods in the supermarket. Xiong Xiaolin quickly took her brother's hand. Seeing these beautifully decorated shops with floor-to-ceiling glass, her heart was still in a mess. She was worried that the reckless Xiong Xiaofeng would accidentally break the things in the shops. In that case, she wouldn't be able to afford it even if she sold herself. Xiong Xiaolin felt inferior again. Kiki, her father and several aunts went shopping many times. She also practiced discerning eyes. Just turning her head and looking around, she glanced at the shop that specialized in selling children's clothes. Papa, there. Kiki happily patted her father's clothes and pointed to the shop she liked. Because Poplar Fruit and Kiki were dressed in extraordinary temperament, the two little tails behind them were not treated coldly by the salespeople of the big shopping mall, who were used to judging people by their appearance. When Poplar Fruit was choosing a princess dress for Kiki to attend the banquet tonight, they were also trying to recommend new clothes to the Xiong siblings. No need, thank you, sister. We're just looking. At this time, it was her sister who made the decision. Xiong Xiaolin waved her hand in embarrassment and said politely, What do you mean no need? You and this sister look at the clothes. Later, we'll buy them together. Poplar Fruit took the time to turn his head and smiled. He was worried that the two children were too shy to pick, so he said to the sales lady, Little sister, help them pick a few clothes to try. If they fit well, we'll buy them together. With Poplar Fruit's promise, the sales lady's spirit rose. She smiled and took the two children to pick clothes. Xiong Xiaolin had been shy, but after being praised by her flowery words, she also picked up a set of girls' clothes and ran to the dressing room to change. Beautiful, beautiful. When Xiong Xiaofeng and Xiong Xiaolin took turns to come out of the dressing room, Poplar Fruit smiled and clapped his hands. It was not to say that it was beautiful. After all, it was the first time for them to try on clothes. Even if Xiong Xiaolin was born beautiful, it was a bit awkward to wear the city children's youthful clothes. However, Poplar Fruit still had to praise them to give them confidence. Papa, where's Kiki? Kiki, who had changed into a beautiful fluffy white dress, had just run to the mirror to show off. She heard her father praise the other children, so she quickly twisted her little butt and ran back and said with jealousy. Poplar Fruit patted his daughter's little head, laughed and said, You're the most beautiful. Later, I'll find you a beautiful crown. Our Kiki is also a little princess. Chapter 5:15. In the children's clothing store, Poplar Fruit bought 3 sets of clothes for the Xiong siblings. He even let them change on the spot, and put the old clothes into a bag. Xiong Xiaolin felt that it was inappropriate. At first, she didn't want Poplar Fruit to buy clothes for her mother. She said that Poplar Fruit had already forked out more than 30,000 yuan for her mother's surgery and hospitalization fees. She couldn't let Poplar Fruit spend money to buy clothes for them. After Xiong Xiaolin said that, even though Xiong Xiaofeng was reluctant, he still put the clothes back. You treat me as an uncle. It's natural for an uncle to buy a few new clothes for his nephew and niece. What's wrong with that? Yanghua smiled and patted their heads. In the end, she still bought the clothes, not allowing them to refuse. Under Chen Zongdai's repeated urging, Poplar Fruit and the rest took a taxi back to the university town. After returning to the room, Poplar Fruit asked, Xiaolin Xiaofeng, do you want to stay in the guest house tonight, or do you want me to send you to the hospital to accompany your mother? Uncle is bringing Kiki to participate in an activity tonight. We might be back later. Uncle, I want to go too. Xiong Xiaofeng said longingly. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said awkwardly, not today. Tonight's matter is more important. It's not convenient to bring you along. Tomorrow, Uncle will be free tomorrow night. I'll bring you out to play. Xiong Xiaolin pulled her brother and said softly, Uncle, you go ahead. We're fine. We'll just stay in the guest house. Don't you want to go to the hospital to visit your mother? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Xiong Xiaolin shook her head and said, we won't go tonight. Mom has to rest after the operation. If we go to the hospital, Dad will have to take care of us. It's better not to trouble him. What a sensible child. Poplar Fruit nodded in his heart. He smiled and said, since that's the case, then you two should stay in the guest house obediently. Xiaolin, you're the big sister now. You have to look after your brother and not run around. Otherwise, Uncle and your father will be very sad if we can't find you. Xiong Xiaolin puffed out her chest and nodded seriously. Poplar Fruit patted Xiong Xiaofeng's head, who looked like a wilted eggplant, and comforted him with a smile. Xiaofeng, don't you like to watch TV? Uncle will teach you how to use the remote control. Tonight you will stay in your room and watch TV, okay? Oh, by the way, Jinzi will also stay in the guest house. Poplar Fruit kicked Gold, who sat up at the foot of the bed when he heard his name, and said with a smile, please take care of him, Xiaolin. Papa Gold, Gold is Kiki's. Hearing that Poplar Fruit wanted Gold to stay in Xiong Xiaolin's room, Kiki became anxious. Daddy knows. Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted Kiki, who was sometimes generous but sometimes narrow-minded. He said, Gold can't go with us. But, Kiki squatted down, hugged Goldie's head, and looked at her father pitifully. But what? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. How about Kiki, you also stay in the room with Sister Xiaolin and Gold. Daddy will go out by himself, okay? No. Kiki cried. She quickly got up from Gold, waved her small hands, and rushed to her father. Kiki wants to be with Papa. Poplar Fruit laughed happily. He laughed a little proudly, because he once again proved that in Kiki's heart, her father would always be the first. This time, of course, Chen Zongdai was not the only one who came to Higashiyama University. In addition to Chen Zongdai and his master, there was also Huang Shuiyu, the dean of the faculty, and a student assistant accompanying them. The student assistant was called Zhu Jingjing, and she was also a graduate student. However, she did not have the same good treatment as Poplar Fruit. She was not qualified to attend the banquet in the evening. Zhu Jingjing knew about Poplar Fruit's existence. She had already heard about Poplar Fruit when he first started to study with Chen Zongdai. Then, after one semester, Poplar Fruit's extraordinary progress had already made Zhu Jingjing numb. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was the only such person in the world. Otherwise, how could other people live? The other people's impression of Poplar Fruit in the school went from being skeptical to being skeptical. When Chen Zongdai recommended his thesis to be published in Translation Expert, and the news came out that Poplar Fruit was successfully published, everyone finally recognized Poplar Fruit, including Zhu Jingjing. She also went from being an anti-fan to a fan, and secretly listed Poplar Fruit as her idol. Therefore, Poplar Fruit asked her to take care of the two children when she was free in the guest house. Zhu Jingjing agreed without hesitation. After seeing Poplar Fruit and Kiki, Chen Zongdai laughed and joked, "You're dressed so handsomely. TSK, this old man is embarrassed to take you out." Poplar Fruit was indeed handsome. He was wearing a slim-fit black suit, with perfectly ironed black trousers and shiny black leather shoes that perfectly displayed Poplar Fruit's long legs. Kiki, who was in his arms, was wearing a pale pink patterned white princess dress. The combination of the two was like a luminous pearl in the night sky, eye-catching. Ah! Poplar Fruit thought it was true and scratched his head. He said embarrassedly, "Then I'll go back and change." "No need, Poplar Fruit. Your teacher is just teasing you." The head of the faculty, Huang Shuiyu, pulled Poplar Fruit and laughed. "Director, you're really too much. We're already so old. How can we compare to young people?" "That's true. We two old men look the same no matter what we wear." Chen Zongdai laughed and said, "In the future, the world will still belong to the young people." "Teacher," Poplar Fruit said speechlessly, "you're still young." In another 10 years, the world will still be yours. Poplar Fruit chatted happily with the two teachers, especially Huang Xiuyu, as they went to the University of Chongqing's business hotel, where the banquet was held. Huang Xiuyu's friendship with Poplar Fruit was earlier than Chen Zongdai's. When Poplar Fruit was still an undergraduate student, Huang Xiuyu had taught Poplar Fruit. However, at that time, Huang Xiuyu didn't expect Poplar Fruit to improve so quickly. Judging from the paper published by Poplar Fruit's achievements had already surpassed most of the teachers in the faculty. Don't be in a hurry to praise him. Poplar Fruit, don't get carried away, Chen Zongdai interrupted. Old Huang, you must not have taken Poplar Fruit's paper seriously. I read it, Huang Xiuyu said unhappily. It's a new theory. When I read it, I was shocked. Who are you talking about? So bold. Then why are you so excited? Chen Zongdai didn't forget to sound the alarm for Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit, as I said before, when this paper is published, you have to be mentally prepared to be questioned. Tomorrow, no, maybe tonight, there will be people looking for you to debate. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, yes, I know. What are you afraid of? Huang Xiuyu said loudly. In my opinion, Xiao Yang's theory is epoch-making. Those who question it are just jealous and short-sighted. Xiao Yang, don't be afraid. You still have your teacher and Higashiyama University to support you. Poplar Fruit nodded gratefully. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.